Welcome back, everybody, to the SCL. We return with more Valorant action, followed up after our Rocket League side. And today we have myself, Infernosis, alongside Mick. As usual, we don't break this one up. This one stays true here for the SCL. Yep. And we're looking here at Florida Gulf Coast in a 1-1 record facing off against Clemson, who are sitting very strong with a 2-0 start to the season.
Yeah, I mean, early still here in the season, can't really freak out too much, but obviously good stats from both these squads to go ahead and at least get them something on the board, regardless of the outcome, or whether or not in terms of what the rounds may be. So, I mean, Clemson having themselves a 2-0 start, obviously having a little more leniency here today, but consider the FGCU showing they have a little bumps in the road. You got to give some benefit to these teams early on in the season for getting themselves those losses, knowing they actually have weaknesses they can learn from. They have a little bit more experience they can kind of go off of instead of just saying, hey, if everything's squeaky clean, why not really make any adjustments? We're looking good for the rest of the season because complacency can definitely be a punishment here to some extent.
Yeah, you can't sit on your haunches, or you can't sit a little bit too far back out there. Clemson hasn't even played 2 games, though, Dallas. To be fair, the Gamecocks listed on League OS, it is a forfeit victory for them. So maybe you can say that that could have been a loss. The Gamecocks could have been a team that would have usurped the Clemson perfect record at that point and dropped it to a 1-1, same as we're seeing from UGC. But it doesn't matter too much. You look down below, you can take a look at the maps we're heading to. You can see the bands broke down. Lotus, Breeze being taken off the board. Kind of shocking considering that we won't see Lotus, which is something we're very familiar with here for the SCL and seen it every single week so far. But it is Ascent picked up first for Clemson, followed by Split, leading into the final of Sunset and Icebox being knocked off the board. Icebox almost got it this week, Dallas. So darn close. But then we get Bind, whatever the lettering is on that. I'm so colorblind, I couldn't read the word on the top of that map pick.
Even for somebody who isn't colorblind, it's pretty difficult. But all things considered, though, I mean, looking at Ascent, I mean, Clemson, I mean, low-key, you're going to have the caster curse kind of working against you this week because you give us Ascent, it's just like you kind of sign up for it a little bit because the map, even then the Collusion Special is also kind of working against you there to some degree because this map is what you may think you know it. I mean, some teams, I want to say definitely a minority of the teams have actually proven that, okay, we chose it and we know that we actually know it better. And it's kind of a rarity here. So to go ahead and kind of get the thing out the board, and especially as your first pick is a little wild to me. I mean, consider that more teams have actually been kind of going ahead and banning out that Ascent and Sunset fairly early on so they can actually go for those specializations because the map pool actually allows that to some degree right now. I'd say it's a pretty healthy map pool. What I feel like is kind of what we had in the past to some degree. But knowing that even then Split, Verticality, kind of Clemson play for that one, FGCU's pick, like to see that coming out from them. And then Bind being the decider, that's the one that kind of just is a little awkward, but makes sense because nobody doesn't really not like Bind. It really just comes down to the other maps just aren't really hitting those sweet spots. And once again, for Sunset to be a map knocked out, especially after we already see Ascent going through, a little bit awkward, but hey, we'll take it nonetheless. But speaking of taking, who are we taking into this game? Who are we putting inside of this map so far? And I'm about to show you the number one reason why I hate this map, because we're going to see the exact same thing on both sides.
The KJ, Sova, Omen, Jet for your duelist, and then a KO. I remember the days when KO being brought into this map was something new and innovative, and we would go, oh my goodness, the KO, we love this. This is a great thing to see. Now it's everything, right? And you know, we say we like it, but maybe not enough to see it in 100% of all matches on this map, right? It's good, but we can also do other things, guys. Other things, folks. And Dallas, you give me like PTSD from Tuesday for saying collegiate special because I watched both maps on the opposition's pick go 7-0 in R6 for the first 2 games. And I'm so tired of seeing teams get blown out on their own map picks. So please, out of any map in any video game ever, Ascent would be the map to not let a blowout occur against you. And I'd have to have faith for this, considering the record they've had to this point. And that is something that should be kept into account when you consider in week 1 for the win, or sorry, week 2 for the win for Florida Gulf Coast, they destroyed Full Sail Armada 2-0. I believe they lost only 8 total rounds in the totality of those 2 maps. And Clemson, I don't have the stats for their week 1 result. I don't know why it's not up there. They only have that forfeit. They are on a cold streak for the SCL and are now facing a team that's coming off of a ridiculously solid week 2 performance and are coming into this pretty hot.
I'm loving these VCT skins, or at least the cards that are already in there. The Paper X, the Koi, already get to see some player expression for who their favorite teams may be, keeping the competitive spirit alive. One thing I was thinking about, honestly, at this point, we should just kind of find maybe something just as a filler, maybe like an ad or something, just during that agent composition select screen for a
so we don't have to see it.
Exactly.
You know?
Just sort of like maybe like the little Pokemon, like, what's that composition? And it's like, what do you think? And it's always just the same thing because it's a trick question. We're not going to get any deviation. We're not going to see anything creative. I would love to see ISO on this map, quite frankly. I mean, I think ISO would be a great introduction. Even every now and again, we see a Phoenix here. I feel it's the only map that he's really available to be played, but it's still such a rarity. Nobody really wants to go for it. This map hasn't been touched in literally ages. I mean, we haven't even seen it be kind of patched to some degree. We don't see Riot saying, oh, we want to keep it kind of fresh to some point. It's just, they literally just don't touch it. It's here, and this is the composition. And any team that chooses it, we know we're going to go into this mirror comp. We know this is going to be the setup, so we know that you better win it because you have to expect exactly what's coming towards you.
Speaking of expectations, tempering them here for a little bit for FGCU. They're going to go in for a very slow default. One player off towards B lobby, moving in, transitioning on Link. Has a long fire angle to hold for the rest of the team as three of them prowl their way up in through walkway and now deep into tree and garden as Fox goes for the tailwind in, able to take down Epoch. Captain of the opposing side, Clemson Orange now down a player being flanked from both sides. Poco and Halo Ore, no chance. They're surviving the onslaught of players from FGCU, putting them now at a 2v5 disadvantage. Spike now down confirmed, and a hold inside garden that still is good for a 1-for-1 trade in the refrag after when Jax takes one more off the board. Great first round for FGCU, and Clemson Orange, despite having the man count on the A site, just couldn't survive the three-man rush in through tree.
I mean, relatively quick as well. I mean, all things considered, going ahead, just pushing on that site, not really having too much actual resilience, or even just kind of stalls there towards the middle of the map to kind of get an understanding of what's going on there. Just rushing right through tree, taking that pressure with the full force, and winning their gunfights outright, where you can see some early confidence coming through for SGCU, and even then going ahead and making sure they had that mid pressure behind it. So that's going to be something I'm going to keep my eyes on here over the course of the game, whether they actually want to kind of go for that early default pressure, maybe put that Omen back towards the A side. They're going to be sitting on top of that tent back in spawn to look over towards the A side, give yourself some leniency, and play into that range as best you can on the attacking side. But even then, with range, as the name of the game for Jacoby, it still doesn't matter that much, considering you had a Bulldog and still lose a fight to a Sheriff, which is, while maybe a little bit awkward, it makes it very easy cue for a rotation to go through the map, go around to the A side, and lose another player in the meantime. So while FGCU have the gun advantage and have the real estate, they don't have the man count to really hold this, so maybe the weapons can compensate.
Yeah, two people down. It's arguably two weapons now that are in the hands of Clemson Orange, and they're going to be able to potentially close that gap so darn well. Triple R had one of the best paranoias I think we've seen in the SEL this season, and it still only comes up with a single kill because the last player stepping out of that gate did not get short-sighted. It puts him down in a very uncomfortable position. Stuff's trying to come up for something. Fox had only been good for one in the first place, and Clemson Orange will, in fact, pull off what a lot of people deem as nearly impossible. A round win in round two after a loss in round one. You steal the bonus from FGCU, and the game is tied up, breaking the mold of Valorant, so to say, and now putting them in an uncomfortable spot to say, hey, how do we play round three? We kind of have to save. Just stack up Sheriffs, maybe a Marshal. Maybe you want to go with an Outlaw if you're really crazy and really test the waters if you have the money for it, but it's just a really poor round two, and it puts you in a bad spot for round three and beyond.
And even then, it really comes down to kind of the setup in terms of the guns and the financials, considering that, I mean, Clemson, you don't see a lot of teams take those kinds of financial risks on those second rounds. They kind of go more for the shorties, the classics, make sure they guarantee themselves a buy in that third. But already that Sheriff, just having that momentum, just going ahead, finding that first pick, and just go ahead and domino effect off the back of it, piggyback it, and find yourself then a Bulldog, toss it off to a teammate. Then once again, another Bulldog, toss it off to a teammate, Spectre. And it gets to the point where you're just saying, oh my God, this is kind of slipped out of our control. But looking at control, you don't have much of it around like this with FGCU. Once again, kind of looking for that early control right to the middle of the map, and that's just not going to work out for them, knowing that already the money is over on Clemson's side in a round like this. And you just can't really pull off the same exact result that they did, considering that they're probably expecting it to some degree, knowing that they're the ones that just put you in that situation.
First strike here, an Outlaw with success, something we did not see last week or the week prior here on broadcast for SEL. And we even hyped it up so many times, saying, you know, maybe we see something out of it. And it's actually, I think, the second time we've seen it purchased as well, because we saw it in week one and we didn't see anything in week two, which was very disappointing. But it is a first blood gained for the Clemson side, and FGCU will now have to think twice about how they close and maintain that distance. Epoch wants to make sure they have that gun advantage at distance. They fall back towards Blast, breaking it down, but it's not the A site that's getting hit. It's B, where Jax cuts off their doppelganger, Kyle and Shu, through the woodwork, and is able to maintain their position and back at Boathouse to not just find Fox, but Triple R on top. Jacoby strikes with the Sheriff, but so much damage had already been dealt, and the chances were already so slim to none. It's all you're able to get, and FGCU will give up yet another round, but they'll finally step into proper space and get themselves some rifles to work with against Clemson Orange, who didn't lose nearly anything in that last round, Dallas, which means they're still going to be having some of those more economic choices for rifles like that Bulldog or that Outlaw. And, you know, if they had a player die, which they did, pick up something a little bit more heavy like that Odin or a Phantom to go with it.
Nothing's really wrong about holding on to a Bulldog in this stage of the game, so long as you feel kind of confident enough in it. I mean, that gun is still a rifle at the end of the day. It's only short 900 credits. I mean, kind of the difference between an Outlaw and an Operator. And we still see the Outlaw in play as well, and both of them still have their own strengths and their own respective places inside this matchup. But looking at how it is so far, the one thing, speaking of placements, I'm kind of surprised that we don't already see that Odin spamming through that B main wall so far, because it kind of feels like it's required to some degree, where it's almost like a hazing ritual. You got to be there. I mean, if you sign up for it, you're here, and there it is. Eventually, go ahead and get the tag, get the shots, get the kill, and give yourself a man advantage pretty early on. So FGCU, once again, look for that mid control. They've already found a little bit of it, or found some space behind it, but they haven't really understood what this map is giving them just yet, because they know that obviously B is not going to be an avenue after that.
When you know that you have B locked off, at least for the Odin, and you at least have the Sova there, do they know that the KJ utility is there in that point, the Nano Swarm, the alarm bot at doorway? They'd have to try to find that information first, but when your default put 2 players inside B main and you've lost one, you try to move to the opposing side. That's exactly what we're seeing here. Rush in from Fox, taking down Poco up in rafters. Halo Jorge knows that they're on site, but wasn't really able to find the right space to enforce the will of FGCU just yet. Epoch with a great shot to the head of Kyle and Shu, attempting to rotate in to assist the team. Spike has to go down, and Fox is not done just yet with their kills. 3 in this round. Every player that has been felled in the opposing side has come from the hands of Jax. And now you have to look at the Odin up above. You can hear the shots going out. Flashbang around the corner. Stops completely blinded. Teammate of Fox, the only one there to help, could not survive the initial fight. Stuffs has to get the next connection. Can't find the second. And it will be a save for Clemson Orange, who recover really off the start and end of Zuko with that Odin.
Yeah, awkward little round there. I mean, especially with those mid-round engagements, consider once more the Clemson Orange. We talked about those guns, those rifles that was available to them, especially with those at least just being Bulldogs. And at the end of the day, the Bulldog with a 75 to the head, it essentially acts like a Phantom to some degree. Just get your 2 shots, and it acts like anything else. And already we saw that being proven by Epoch. Able to hold down that tree very sufficiently with that gun. No real challenges presided because of it. And, I mean, looking at the rest of the team, they just kind of acted as if it was just every other normal round, trading out respectively between each other. No real overextension of the economy. I mean, it allowed them to play a little more aggressively. You know, they weren't spending as much, but considering how much money they got now, they could really hold to that mentality and play the game in the same exact way. Already, early pressure going towards this B site, looking to double things down. You know that Ova's going to be there. You know that Ova's going to be there, which is surprising why you want to go ahead and push it. But maybe you just want to funnel it out, kind of punish it to some degree. No, it's going to hit you, and that's why it's there.
This is sort of a commitment round that doesn't make a lot of sense for me for FGCU. They've yet to have a non-thrifty round or non-eco round on this B site that's panned out for them, or even had any full attempt into the objective. It's another thrifty. Stingers had a shorty in hand for one player that was rushing in. Your initial jet that also had the blade storm out. You're attempting to scrounge something up together, and you're rushing into an objective that you know has a weapon that can just spray and literally pray and get most of the kills in the process. It doesn't spell the best position. And it's really just working out exactly the way that was expected. Clemson Orange coming up big. They had 4 players just a moment ago, if it wasn't for Kyle and Shu taking down Zuko. But where we see a great showcase from Fox in the previous round with a 3K, Poco matches it here as well with a 3K in this round.
Yeah, beautiful little retake going underway there. Just dropping the operator. Make sure to go ahead and pick up the Vandal and saying, all right, let me play for retake. Let me be the one that kind of go ahead and set the pace here. And already doing exactly that. Not just in that respective position or that specific player, the entirety of Clemson Orange with that one round that they found themselves in round number 2, shutting down the force of FGCU. It is completely just demolished this game so far. Sitting at 4-1 on the board, it seems like FGCU haven't really found their footing just yet, which is a good call for this timeout. I'm happy to see that more and more teams are starting to actually utilize the timeout. Because it feels like for the first, 2 years, they forgot it existed and just didn't know it was allocated to them for every single game, or better yet, every single half. But still, trying to figure out what to do with that from the shadows. It's a lot. It's a lot to ask for, knowing you made a very big investment in that last one, even the round before when they still didn't have the full economy. The null command during that 4th round. You see the blade storming the last one. and you're saying, okay, we're doing these things out one by one. And while it may work to some degree and give us a little bit of leniency, it's not really securing rounds. We're not really popping them with reasoning. And now with those completely being gone, you got to kind of figure out what can we do? How can we counteract theirs? How can we stall them? And I don't know what you can really do at a point like this. Your mid control isn't really there or as present anymore because you've let that economy kind of get out of your own control here. So Poco, even if you do see a death of that operator, you're going to possibly more than likely see another one being bought immediately after with no kind of regurgitation. And same exact thing with the Odin and that Sova. I mean, it's these rounds where you're just like, it's a setup. You know it's there. You got to find a way to really just kind of go ahead and shut that thing down. And a Blade Storm like that last round and the desperate attempt that it was obviously isn't really going to be your answer. You still have to go ahead and overwhelm from multiple angles.
When the death bell tolls, you know that the early stages of these rounds are going to get a lot more difficult, especially when you have reason to believe leading up to this point that an operator was going to be barreling down towards you. And now full confirmation of it with that utility clearance puts things in an even worse strait, especially when Halo Ore is not cleared in Winery. 3 players in a single swoop of their rifle, not even needing to reload to the next mag, puts Clemson Orange now at a 2-player advantage off the back of the refrag. And FGC, you have lost all of that entry potential on their roster, left with just a KJ and a KO. And truly, that's a lot of information, but too much of that is passive information and does nothing for you on that A site any further. And so they'll have to relocate. Now moving off towards B, where there is only one player actively defending this, but it's the one player that doesn't need to be watching the breach and can single-handedly do this with utility alone, silencing the back secondary player that attempts to step inwards and leaving the front one there for a 1v1, but the detonation was too soon. And Jacoby will have their secondary roster player, Kyle and Chu, right there behind them to close out the kill on
10
Jax.
seconds left.
Big damage already going through, though. I mean, considering the Jacoby only has 12 remaining, that shock dart, even then, if you have an angle, you could find that last hit. Denying that plan, not even having to re-engage with the rest of the team. I mean, once again, Clemson Orange having these luxuries allocated to them, and honestly, just kind of popping it for fun. There is literally a lockdown available for the side of FGCU, and you see the Hunter's Fury should be probably safe for that 10 times out of 10, but they're just kind of egoing the game at this point. I'm hoping that FGCU can now use that ultimate, understand the opportunity that's now presided to them, and they could just honestly use that to the fullest extent. Use that lockdown to find some site control, overwhelm something, or at least just find themselves some real estate and get into a post-plant scenario. Because, I mean, we're just not even finding those actual engagements. We're not getting to those second halves of rounds. We're seeing it just kind of being chokeholded immediately.
I think the thing as well for Clemson Orange, they know that FGCU are in this really weird spot in Dallas when it comes to the eco of being able to buy and then not being able to buy the next round and then being in a spot where, you know, they have to save afterwards. And they're trying to force this round to be an eco in some capacity. And that is the case. Guardian was in play for 2 players with half armor. Wasn't the best buy you necessarily could have. So guaranteeing a win and, you know, fewer deaths in that previous round could put FGCU on the back burner another time and maybe even guarantee it an extra round on top. But they've come in guns blazing to this A side, completely taken over the throne of this objective. And not only have they done so well to this point, it may just be flawlessly, as it's just Poco remaining in a 1v5 taken down afterwards by Triple R, 3K to their name. And it will in fact be a flawless way to go about it for FGCU.
If you buy regardless, I mean, coming up from Clemson Orange there, but even then more so just FGCU finally getting into a post-plant scenario. I mean, even then, if they lost 2 players, you're saying that's a gorgeous round for them comparatively to what we've seen so far. I mean, we have not seen any real sheds of light so far in this game besides that first round. And while it's taken them a very long time to get to this point of finding themselves another round to work with, they have at least some leniency and some insurance off the back of it. The Hunter's Fury still available, that lockdown available to them. I mean, if they go ahead and make sure to utilize it to the full extent and win another round on something like this, as we talked about earlier with the economics, you know that Clemson Orange was still going to be buying up these operators, this Odin. So just go ahead and use that. Know that they're going to have those guns more than likely. Find a way to shut it down pretty early. Even then, go from a different approach and then just see if you can win this round.
Poco can't be missing the shot of a lifetime, the easiest shot of their lifetime.
What?
And apparently they're just totally blind. Poco still only gets away with one in the process, but the rest of the team is picking up House on B. Epoch in the back of Boathouse had Jax there for assistance. Damaged by Jax, but kills by Epoch. And the defensive position of the players on A sites rotated back in. You're pincered, FGCU. You've got nowhere to go. Triple R is praying that staircase is good enough for them, and you've got your KO lagging behind in Cubby. Where do you step to? Nowhere. Hell, down goes Triple R, doppelganger of Halo Jorge, and Jacoby, who is already low at 27 HP, is stuck, trapped by Switch, and they'll stay there for the remainder of this round. It's a 6-2 split right now for Clemson Orange, and they are in control, it seems like, Dallas, no matter the result from the previous round.
I mean, even then for the rest of the set, they're going to be in control to some degree.
Yeah.
I mean, look at it now, having a guaranteed even half worst case scenario on the board. You're looking at FGCU and you're saying, all right, it's your turn to step it up once more. Highlight's already been on you, but once you're under the light for so long, it starts to get a little bit hot. So, I mean, it's at that point now where you're saying, are you either going ahead, taking control of that spotlight, or are you letting it burn you alive? And I mean, we're kind of at this point now to where you have that no command again. You're just kind of welling up on these resources here. You have a buy to some degree in a round like this, so let's see what can be done with it. Punish that Hunter's Fury for not really existing there. You got to see whether or not the actual nade can shut that thing down, and it didn't. So it's a rush to the back of sight. You know that KO is going to more than likely be dead, just kind of old T-Rex hands inside the house, and that's going to be a player down, a guaranteed one, better yet. But still, some nice equilibrium. Waiting for the Stark Shroud to go down. The rest of the team getting onto site, setting up for the post plant. It's the second post plant we will see from FGCU, at least when they have 3 or more players remaining. So this could not, once again, be a testament to what they can really accomplish.
It's the second post plant we've seen that they actually have impact, weapons, the ability to contend. They have the man advantage here as well. It's only by 1, and Jax is quick to forfeit that. Thankfully, the refrag is there for Kyle and Chu. Stuff's also up for another one. A 2v4 now in play for Clemson Orange, and these two players, respectively, aren't saying they really want to peek this. They're going to fall on back a little bit further. Poco will go down and drop the operator. Something I don't think they necessarily needed to swing there from B main, as FGCU could have just had a single player be lost and Poco get the heck out of Dodge and not be too concerned with it. It's going to be a very hefty weapon you'll have to repurchase up, but Poco's good for it. They've got enough for at least that and half armor with a couple credits extra on top, get them a gumball out of the machine here in spawn, but they won't have enough for the full package that you want to have as a Jet. And that's going to be that lockdown being the end-all be-all for FGCU, and they didn't have that Hunter's Sphere to counteract it.
Keep up.
And even then more so, I mean, just kind of looking at it now, speed of resources and the operators you mentioned for the side of Poco. Even then, Kylan is also going to be running an operator here on the attacking side, which I think could be a nice little curveball. Don't get me wrong, but you don't really see too much success of these operators in the attacking side when you're the one swinging these angles, because it just doesn't really pan out too well for you. So with that mid control, that lane for that operator, just looking for an early pick and just looking for early information, that's the big thing. You knew that FGCU, they love finding control of this middle map, and you can't blame Poco for kind of backing up and surrendering that to some extent so you can keep on playing your actual lineup. But finally giving it up, looking for rotation. More than likely, you're getting calls of saying these players are possibly rotating over towards the A side. What real setup do you have towards B? That's kind of the question that I'm going to be lingering on in a round like this, but it may not even matter. Consider that FGCU are going to go for that mid cross. It looks like they are going to find themselves in the shoes of that A hit, and especially when you find a little bit more detection, that make you one more. They just got to wait things out, play it slow, and don't get overzealous here if they really want to find a hole. But more so importantly for FGCU, I think they got to really make sure that this tree hit works out perfectly. And with only KO being there, this guy's going to be making or breaking.
Epoch's been good enough for Clemson Orange when it comes to defending this guard and pressure, but unfortunately caught out with the util, not ready with the gun, and Fox, though, a little bit slow on the uptake. Still able to be good for the kill. Halo Jorge back behind Generator, able to finish off 2 players coming in for FGCU, which evens out the man count now for a post-plant scenario again for FGCU. But it doesn't last for too much longer. You take down all the options in front of you if you're Clemson Orange. And with Jax now on the flank, a player spotted below Jacoby who's already low in HP, and Stuff's now position known despite the loss of life, puts Clemson Orange at an advantage they need to hold on to if it wasn't for Jacoby striking the head of Poco and just Zuko remaining. 21 HP in a dream. This is an easy wallbang if you've ever seen one coming through. The Odin is there, but they just can't find the spot to do so. And the time is already too short to matter. FGCU will take another round. And Clemson Orange, despite the 6-2 lead they had, it's starting to fall further and further back towards FGCU.
And despite the 4 players they had on site for that hold, it only felt like 2 of them were really doing anything there. I mean, sure, the KO drops early. EPOP just goes ahead and gets swung inside the smoke. That's something we could, that you can chalk up the chance. But still, then on site, you have Halo just there, mowing through players, holding things out to the best of their degree. And then everybody else, you have Poco on that operator, refusing to swing out of these smokes. Has been absolutely choked out by these things over the course of this game, keep in mind. I mean, every shot you find a chance for, it's a 50-50, but you never even get the chance if you never even see the swing in the first place. And even then more so, your Odin is waiting. I mean, these guys are just letting their players just sit on islands. It comes down to the pure success of 2 players in every single round. And while Clemson's had that so far, I think FGCU are starting to catch on to the understanding of, so long as we get the site, good God, what do they bring to the table after?
The impact isn't there. Clemson Orange aren't succeeding in the early stages of these rounds with these early executions out into the objective for FGCU. And they have to start recovering for that. I think that's why we just see the aggression, even if it's a thrifty round here for the Sheriff wide into B main. They want to swing that arch. They want to get the fight early to FGCU because they know that the player count isn't there. It's when they only have limited weapons, the impact can't be as positive. Poco, though, does get a nice shot to the head of Kyla Chu. Not necessary as they're already damaged. They will find Jacoby quickly after the fact as well. This is a shockingly doable scenario for Poco at this point. As a rifle taken and dropped inside B main, gives them a fighting chance here in this next fight. Triple R lining up and stuff's almost behind them. I would have lost my collective mind witnessing a double spray down there. But FGCU will survive that. And they will move on to possibly tie us up at halftime despite Clemson Orange's great start to the side.
One at a time is all it really takes, and round by round, they've clawed themselves out of that detriment that was that kind of 5-2 scenario. Or even than 4-1 better is what we saw initially, and I mean, it could have gotten much, much, much worse, but already able to go ahead and rebound to some degree. FGCU now having 3 ultimates on the board. The From the Shadows still not having the impact that you really want it to, but I mean, even then being there to kind of shut down that lockdown if it comes to it, but the no command also being available, you can absolutely just find complete denial of that, knowing how big that thing is. You don't even need to push out all the way into A main to find effect off of it. Just go ahead and stand on site. You could be the one defusing for all you care. But as it looks so far, there's some early aggression coming through the Blade Storm. FGC, we're going to be reliant on this, knowing that it's the last round. Why not just go ahead and pop it and at least have it there for a right click, where even if you got a gun, you got a backlit little kind of impromptu shot.
The no command is available for Clemson Orange, and you have to expect that it will be popped here fairly soon. The lockdown, it just buy you a little bit of time, so you don't necessarily have to be too concerned with it yet. But you can cut down a little bit of the utility options that would allow for Florida Gulf Coast to escape from the objective after this plant. And now you can use the utility to burn them back even further. Zuko will stick down this plant. A huge player stack there for Clemson Orange just to stand there. There was really nothing that Florida Gulf Coast could do. It was an unfortunate scenario, rock in a hard place. And to make matters worse, you peek him at the end. It's just a moral loss, though, to be fair. It gives Clemson Orange the positive guaranteed half that they had to really work hard for there right at the end of this half. But they do manage to go through 7-5 as they transition onto the attack, where you'd hopefully assume, Dallas, that maybe Halo Jorge won't continue to go 15-8 into the second half and go maybe even 30-16 by the end of it or something. You'd hope that it goes a little bit lower and maybe Poco steps up even further on this entry.
I mean, now being on the attacking side of the map, Poco's in the shoes now where you actually have to step up. I mean, you can't hold on to that operator anymore. You got to swing for the team. You're the first one swinging on a round-to-round basis, which, as much as you'd hate to probably hear this, is contrary to what we saw in that last round, or that entire last half, better yet, with that operator always being so prevalent and always having the money to be there to buy it over and over and over again. So, I mean, still, looking at the successes of this team, you got to see an actual follow-up, you got to see any kind of aggression coming out to them. And Clemson Orange, while they may want to be the ones on the attacking side, FGCU still feeling the spirit of that last half and just kind of pushing right through that line of scrimmage once more to bring the fight to them.
It's an interesting attempt to default when you have Spike deep into A main and you still leave 2 players out towards B main. It's forfeiting so much control that could have been there in a man count for Clemson Orange, and it's something that you can't really allow for the most part in a pistol round when you know you need to get the spike down first and foremost. It just isn't the best post-plant positioning for Clemson Orange. It's kind of to be expected for a pistol round, but it wasn't fully fleshed out. And it leads to FGCU with a huge man advantage coming into the post-plant. A 3v2, then a 3v1. No chance that you're able to succeed there. When two players are extending up into rafters, when you have the man disadvantage on top of it, and you know they're rotating, Clemson Orange will give up that pistol, and FGCU on the defense will now have the Bulldogs needed to fight further back up on rafters, or maybe even aggress a little bit further back towards that B defender spawn on gateway to keep Clemson at bay.
I mean, FGCU just to get themselves one more. I mean, I love the way they started that round. I mean, just going ahead and making sure to kind of grab it by the reins, because I mean, they have needed that momentum. They need to get themselves at least a start at some point. And I mean, we saw it during that first half. So we know they have good success in these pistol rounds. They do a lot of studying. They get a lot of understanding. I mean, it seems like they practice them to some degree and kind of play this constant game of rock, paper, scissors with themselves, of whether or not they're actually going to go for a push or not. But as it seems so far, they just can't let this slip away once more. It looks like kind of in that last half where, you know, the attacking side is supposed to push. It's that difference of surprise versus expectation. And when you're on the attacking side, you don't really have that leniency anymore.
There goes Poco in towards site. Triple R, quick with the draw with the Bulldog, and you've lost your entry now here once again. And your initiator's probably the most important aspect for a round like this, to get that first blood and allow for the team to escape into a site to then get the extra credits for a plant. There's nothing there. You've lost that point of entry. You've lost that impact that should have and could have been there. And you're going to be forced to rotate the other way. And this B site stacks up with utility. You're going to need to find a tertiary way to entry into the objective. And you picked the right idea up through market, but Kyle and Chu had that on lockdown. Just a Spectre for sure, but you can at least succeed at range with it, unlike these classics in hand. And FGCU will have no problem tearing down all the remaining players that couldn't even get close to an objective for Clemson Orange. And they will, in fact, tie things up 7-7, where Clemson Orange will have to guess if they can buy up absolutely everything they want. Rifles for sure. You're not going to, you know, I'll say half cheek this here to be a little bit more kind, but you don't have full armor, and when you're facing Bulldogs and Spectres in the first place, you kind of want as many chances to survive those smaller caliber bullets as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean, already, I mean, it just comes down to, can FGCU meet that same success that we saw Clemson Orange find in that first half? I mean, if they can meet that immediately and find some respective results off of it, I mean, this game is just completely in their control. But I mean, it comes down to these Bulldogs, it comes down to the Spectre, whether they can actually find the shots off of it. And I think, honestly, Clemson Orange, they had some outstanding showsmanship with those specific guns in hand. I mean, keep in mind, Epoch holding down that kind of tree area, that just hero tip that was there, getting at least maybe 2 kills and a little bit extra damage off the back of it. And still looking at Halo, who's just holding down sight, has these kind of angles just set up for himself, playing Omen and just kind of being an absolute unit simultaneously. But I mean, do you see that same respective attempt coming right here? Do you see the setup? Do you see the possibilities? Well, it really comes down to them. They have a lot of KJ utilities set right through that sidewalk, but do they have enough players? Do they have enough gunnery? And do they know what's really coming for them? Well,
one enemy remaining.
Not really. It's an absolute mow through inside that boathouse. And anybody that wants to come through market's getting shot as well.
It's a blender. The back of boathouse. You have one side where you're worried about a nanoswarm that's still there, so you can't even escape away from your own utility. The opposing end, you have an Aldrone that spotted a player, but what can you do when you then have to be able to fight back against the other side as well? And you miss the actual pip and ping to give you that advantage in that gunfight. It's just an impossible scenario for Florida Gulf Coast. And it just got exasperated when you lose 2 more players down in bottom mid, leaving just your Jet all by their lonesome. And Fox has been damn good. Dallas, for FGCU, has been a great proprietor of their success when it came down to the attack in the few rounds we saw, especially early, which is a problem where we saw kind of FGCU weren't feeling themselves just yet. A 3K in round 4, and now a 3K here in round 3 of the second half. Very good, but you had to get all 5, and you had to stop the spike plant, and that just wasn't going to happen with that much time.
Yeah, spike plant being the biggest thing that you're really looking for, obviously, for the round success, because that's the one that goes on the scoreboard. But at the end of the day, Clemson Orange going ahead, winning at that round pretty darn well into that regard as well. I mean, that's what it really comes down to. Getting themselves on the board, putting this respective 2-1 split back on the field. And, I mean, this is kind of as close as it's going to get, really. I mean, FGCU really bringing the fight there, making sure they're going to grit their teeth and get right back into this thing, making sure it's a deficit of 2, and that's why you want to fight for it. You want to get it back to a point like this where we saw 4-1 earlier. We saw 5-2, and then now we're seeing 8-7. We're seeing things stay close to the margin of 1, but really, what else do you have to work with? How long will this last? And will it continue? Because once we get those double digits, that's where it gets a lot more important. And we're at these points now to where 1 round sets the difference of those double digits. Because if Clemson wins this, they're sitting at 9. And then more than likely, FGCU is going to be sitting on an eco, where you could just say 10's probably guaranteed.
You fed the beast. And this is usually a saying that said, even when the player's name is not an animal, Fox has been an exceptional force to be reckoned with for FG, like mentioned in the last round. But when you end off with a huge 3K and you kind of get fed a little bit towards the end, the ego can arise. They'll take ego swings early and they'll aggress where necessary in A arches and pick up a first blood there as well. The issue is that the rest of the team isn't necessarily on that same page of clicking heads. Because of that, Clemson Orange are able to even the odds ever so slightly, knocking down and humbling the player in the back of defender spawn on B, and now forced to try to engage to close that space as your player is on site. Clemson Orange need to get there to assist and go for a plant, but you have left Spike. You have to use the ultimate from the shadows to get it back, but that's really what you have it there for. When else are you going to use it? And they had a get out of dodge free button at any moment past that point, as Clemson Orange will now be at a post plant at a man disadvantage, but site control here is pretty darn easy to hold with these angles.
Yeah, I mean, this is a pretty kind of safe and sound post plant. These angles, you don't really get too much checking going on. It really comes down to just taking your ones and by each and other. And Boko being the last one there to really kind of capitalize off the back of their people's backs turns. It's a little awkward of a situation where you'd expect him to kind of be the first one in line to be encountering people, but it doesn't matter. It comes down to making sure you win those fights, having that surprise element of a duelist somewhere else on the map, maybe lurking for a little bit of time, and then finding that cutoff and then being there when it matters the most. And well, now finding that round number 9, that's what matters most. You get it done, you find yourself the 9th, and I talked about it. This is going to be an eco here for FGCU, so more than likely that last round, as I said, leads not just to Clemson getting 9, but getting 10 as well, and that's where it really starts to matter. You look at these collegiate teams over and over again, and they just genuinely hate just finding more rounds when they reach round number 10. Already here early, cut it off to some extent, but with some early swings, not really going in the direction of FGCU, with the sheriffs kind of falling one by one, and more information being given up in the meantime for an exchange of it. I don't know if they're really going to find it, but somebody could always put on the cape at any point.
Sorry, did Fox pop the Blade Storm and then swing with a classic? Because I'd like to believe that's not the case, but that's what we just saw. Fox had popped the Blade Storm, walked out of Puppy into the opening of mid, trying to fight in Fountain Courtyard in general, and does it successfully with a kill, but with a pistol and not a blade. I swear I saw that correctly. It doesn't make much sense to me, but it's still the only kill that FGCU have found, so you gotta have some positives forward. Jack steps in first here, now going for the plant, able to take down one more in the process on that A side. A flank is being brewed up from Triple R on the side of Florida Gulf Coast, but Jax will set up a turret to hopefully deny that. Triple R attempts to squeeze out from underneath it, and despite having the drop on Jax, still can't collect the spray precisely enough to ensure they get that frag, at least a consolation prize for Florida Gulf Coast in this round. And nothing happens because of it. Clemson Orange up to 10, and this is where the problem will arise, Dallas. As we've mentioned so many times here in Collegiate, it's so darn difficult to get rounds after this.
I mean, it just really comes down to the mental. I mean, these teams always kind of think to some degree, oh, we're round number 10, game's over, right? And I don't know if you come from CS, but that's not the case there either. So just keep playing the game till it says victory.
It ain't over.
So, I mean, just keep on playing this thing, man. I understand it's satisfying. It's a different amount of digits compared to what you usually used to seeing. But, I mean, you got to keep on playing this thing. And, I mean, even then, it's the final countdown. Keep on playing it. Don't really split up just yet. But even more so, that kind of applies to FGCU tenfold. Only sitting around number 7. They have to get themselves not only a round after this, but they got to go ahead and culminate these back-to-back-to-back, because that last round, as you mentioned, only really found 1 kill. Not too much of an actual hit on the economy here for the side of Clemson Orange. So knowing that already they're investing a Blade Storm just for the heck of it, because they can make that investment if they want to, because it's probably going to come back fairly quickly. The lockdown is the thing that's really being used here to say, look, get over that line. Let's just make sure to shut this thing down. They didn't have a Hunter's Fear to stop it. So this is a free site for us.
Area. There they are.
Lockdown will keep the defenders at bay, but it wasn't able to really get you into the objective whatsoever. You didn't have the space. You continuously just get sprayed down from defender spawn. There were 3 players that were just rotating in and out for who was going to be firing at this exact moment on reload. And they'll get the plant down eventually, but it will be a full 5v5. No one was be able to removed, and get kept long enough, and FGCU can position themselves correctly, having multiple angles to work from, and they can mostly, for the buy count, ignore B main as they'll place up the smokes to do so and have Fox with the operator watch that side. 2 strikes with the sniper of choice, and cap it all off with a third to make matters worse. Nearly flawless post plant, which is a shocking thing to say, as FGCU recover from an eco round and now move up to a 20 kill count for Fox and up to their round 8.
I want to go ahead and thank Fox for reminding me that that's what an operator should look like in the hands of a Jet. So appreciate that nonetheless. But I mean, even more so kind of in the back of a round like that, you already saw the big investment go through. You saw the Blade Storm. You saw the lockdown go through. I am genuinely so shocked that we didn't see Epoch talk that null command just right there in spot. I mean, what does it hurt? It's so massive. It covers up the entire site. It delays that retake. And even if you already hear so many feet, knowing that you're sitting there, A, you have a free swing on that operator because you only go into a down but not out stage. And they can use no utility for it whatsoever. But still, questions up in the air. Doesn't really matter too much. You still have another little dynamic duo of those initiators to kind of combine off the back of each other. But still, not going to really have the impact you need until you reach that post plant, and even you kind of have your own successful initiating your site take off the back of that. It's almost like a, I don't know, like a intermediate lockdown, but it doesn't really do the T-Rex hands. It doesn't put you in baby form.
It's not cool.
Yeah, it's just no utility, no guns, no fight, nothing at all. But regardless, FGCU to get themselves one. I mean, after a round like that, a very big investment, very good hold from them, even outstanding, better retake, and to get themselves an 8th, have a lockdown of their own now. Another free retake is in order, quite frankly, because, well, that's the power of that ultimate.
I think as well, like, the whole reason you lose out that last round is because of the smokes that are placed inside B main. That gave options for fight. That gave 2 angles instead of just stairs. They also had walkway. And none of that would have been a problem if you just used the no command. Like,
30 seconds
you need to deny that utility. It just wasn't there. What a shot from
my
Fox.
God.
A pixel of Poco's hair spotted just before they duck under the Raptors cover. And it's a devastating strike to be rung true, leaving just Epoch now and the rest of the team falling on that A side. Yeah, they have
10
spike, they
seconds
can
left.
get this down, but they know it's just credits. They're not putting this in a great post-plant position, but they do strike triple on Kylan.
Who else?
Epoch, where is this gone? A 3K, but Fox is still on the board. And Jacoby's not far behind it either. Now onside, tempting the spike.
Oh my God!
Epoch's got the 4K. Will and may just pull out the ace here as they'll jump peek the swing. They'll get some shots out. Jacoby, don't fake, baby. They'll still get it. An 11th round for Clemson Orange and a devastating result for FGCU. Despite all of their transgressions on A, B is their ultimate undoing.
Why doesn't he just pop the ult? I mean, he's going to get it back anyways. That's more than half of it right there. Wow. We talked about hero players, and we highlighted Epoch earlier, talked about him on that defensive side, him and Halo. And, well, when the going gets tough, who more can you really rely on to get the job done? And while it's, the initiator is a lot more of a kid to actually get it done. So you're obviously putting our chips on Epoch there, but outstanding efforts, and even more so, well played there. I mean, just know that already in a 1vx scenario, you can't blame FGCU for not investing there. Just going ahead, playing it out together. You're not going to go for a lockdown. You're not going to Hunter's Fury. You're not going to pop all the utility in the world to just absolutely decimate this guy. You're saying it's just one man. That's a lesson you learn pretty darn quickly, and I think the timeout's well earned on a round like that. Go ahead, take the time, figure out what happened there, and say, all right, it's not about who just won that round. It's about what that round means. And now seeing 11-8 over that 10-round threshold, you have the money to once again buy it. What are you going to do next? And you have a lot of ultimates to really make a decision with, so go ahead and take your pick.
It's hard to put any blame on FGCU when it was just a single player on Clemson doing all the work. I think the craziest part about that for the breakdown on the ending there was Jacoby being knocked down with a single shot as they attempted to cross over to the opposing side of Switch and then losing stuff right after the fact. It's shocking, but that was an expected firefight. If they win a 2v1, it's not the biggest deal. The breakdown for your third player swinging off alone, and then the breakdown of the 2 players after the fact, Poco being not even a matter of contention in comparison to Fox right now, as we've seen Fox has been so darn good on the defense for FGCU. But Fox, like, your end-all be-all, it seems like, for Florida Gulf Coast. So many of these times gets caught out not inside their cloudburst because it's sent a little bit too far backwards on that spike and they step out of it, giving them the line of sight. Little mistakes, and we're seeing individuals capitalize for Clemson Orange, but we've only seen it truly out of Halo and Epoch to this point. And Epoch's been fairly silent previous and prior to that round. They were sitting at a 7-kill stat line.
Yeah.
And they've now reached themselves up to 12, but they were dead last prior to that, which is okay for your role and responsibilities, but the team needs to be able to step up past that, and we just haven't seen that consistently in comparison to Florida Gulf Coast having the players up front, the initiating power, backpack the rest of the team. Flash goes out for Jacoby. Great shots to Zuko. Do they see Poco? No, but Poco took a little too long to strike, but the second one was clean. We'll at least give Poco that.
I mean, awkward encounters nonetheless, but still gets the job done at the end of the day. But Clemson Orange have the numbers advantage. This is what it really comes down to. You have the pressure. You're pushing this A side. I mean, what player's going to swing on you? And if you're swinging on the Halo, that's the last player you want to. That's the top frag from the side of Clemson Orange. That is the MVP thus far. And that's the one that's done it on both halves. We talked about Epoch, a nice early start in that last half, able to go ahead and now clutch things out and kind of once again prove their worth here in this one. But still, Halo has been that consistency factor, whether or not being a duelist, whether it be an initiator, being a controller, literally setting this game and just showing that you were the one, you were the all-encompassing, you were the determining factor, not only just setting up these sites, but just murdering anybody who just trespasses and touches its ground. So in a 1v3 scenario, Kylan has the opportunity to go ahead and find the same exact clutch kind of situation that we saw Epoch in the last round. Not nearly the numbers that we saw in that last encounter, but still, and sadly, not being an initiator, you don't really have the kit to surmount to do something there, knowing you still got the spike to deal with in the meantime, rather than the timer actually playing in towards your favor rather than against it. So a 12th round being put on the board here for Clemson Orange. Looks like this could be match point. Most definitely, without a doubt, is going to be, but still, FGCU with all these options still allocated towards them, is this match point? Because there's still a lot here to work with. I mean, you got all the colors in the world, and you got a massive, massive canvas to deal with, but FGCU just seems like they're not in the mood for painting right now.
Placing swamp grenade.
A little bit too silent here in the I would say the depth of these attacking rounds for Clemson Orange. Too much of the actual meat of this sandwich has been going in favor for Clemson. You get the pistol, you get the eco afterwards, you're real happy with that result, but you're not really finding the success you were hoping for on that defensive position. And you've got to make up for that here quickly. And like you said, colors, I'm not good with them, but they've got 4 of them flashing up there in the top right of your screen. They've got ultimates to work with, and they need to find the time and space to use so. Hunter's Fury comes out for Clemson Orange, trying to get a little bit of tag damage out in after the fact, but a flank in from Market puts Clemson Orange in a very good spot, and they'll even out those frags that they just lost as Triple R relocates over to the back of Boathouse to defend a very possible heavy push for Clemson on B. But they're smart enough to say, okay, maybe 2 players in Boathouse isn't what we like. Let's go to A instead.
No, this is huge.
They're baiting.
Yeah, that's literally what they're doing. They're just going ahead, giving that side up. They know that none of the players going to be somewhere around the map, and it's going to be overwhelming numbers, and they're expecting players already on that B side of the map to go and cut things off. So that's where he set Epoch back towards Market, waiting for a lap around. That's one. Trigger just one for a second, and this is a 1v3 once again by Kylan, and you didn't see that in the last round, so you're not going to see it in this one. FGCU ending that map with seemingly every single ultimate available to them, but never an opportunity to even use them, just to elongate the game for at least another round or 2. Nice little start here for Clemson once again, and I mean, going ahead and showing it that even though they had that second week forfeited to them, who really cares? The third week, they're coming out swinging, they're proving what they're made of.
The breakdown of Epoch there in that final moment is just such a beauty to see. You can see in the mini map, if you ever go back and watch, and the players should be, because you should be VOD reviewing. You look at Epoch, and they had stepped halfway over to go up into rafters on the A side, and then you see this moment where they go, but what if I did this? But what if I sat here? But what if I held the cutoff, which is my role here to do so, to get my team safely in for a 2v1 on the opposing sides? And they did. And nobody's checking that corner for some godforsaken reason. For FGCU, you got to be clearing those corners, which is a problem that me and Dallas are very keen on pointing out a few times here and there seemed like was lacking for Clemson Orange on their defense, on retakes, and even a little bit on their attack when it came to their initiators. Not clearing corners, bit of a troublesome time for Poco, but the rest of the team steps up and really helps in those. And you were finding a much better job about it because you were willing to give up the initiator, which is not the wrong idea necessarily.
Yeah.
And you were able to have tertiary angles to swing from like that last round. You lost B main entirely, but my goodness, you win it back from market, which is exactly what you're hoping for.
I mean, looking at the big difference there, I mean, you saw one controller have all the kills in the lobby, and you saw one controller have every single assist in the lobby. And I mean, you look at FGCU, their team seemed a lot more rounded. They had a lot more assists just from every single one of their players, showing that, okay, if we work together, we find these kills. But it comes down to those hero plays. Can they individually perform? And even then, I mean, that was just what was really lacking there. We saw just instead of players kind of working together. I talked about when they were on the defensive side and just had a couple of these holds. It felt like they were just on an island, and you're just like, why are we swinging these so slow and just letting them funnel in and taking these fights? Not even just one by one. We're going one, wait for it, by one. It's not really even then just synergized. When you know these assists are looking strong, when you know the team works well together, and you're not going for these full hits, these full breaches of a retake, it's not really going to work out too well for you. And I think they've learned their lesson. Regardless, though, even though that, I mean, their half didn't seem all that great, they found a way to get back into the game. We see ourselves looking at 13-8, not the worst of stat lines, considering the kind of start we saw for that matchup and the dominance Clemson had early on. But, I mean, looking at the next map, it's going to be FGCU's pick. So there's a possibility. Maybe Ascent just isn't their map, but I got to give it to Clemson. Credit where it's due. You chose it and you won it.
Yeah, and it's expected to a degree that Ascent would be won by the team that picks it. It is a map you'd kind of expect the other way. It's so 50-50, but winning it and it being close, not shocking whatsoever. That's how it should be, since everybody knows it. So you look at it and say Clemson won their map pick. Maybe it'll be the same thing for FGCU, and we're going to see our third map come through. Don't expect that, right? You can have no expectations seeing Ascent. Essentially, forget that it happened and just register this as a 1-0 start, and it's a must-win map here for FGCU because it holds no degree of correlation whatsoever to our next map or even a third should it be required. But until then, we're going to take a break, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more Valorant action. The SCL returns with more Valorant action here, Dallas. After map 1 has concluded on the map of Ascent, one team had to rise above the rest of them, and we're kind of at split ends here, right? And we're heading over to the map of Split. How coincidental on top of that. You kind of have to throw the scoreboard out. I mentioned it before the break on our first map. Ascent just tends to be more close than other maps. But we are heading over to the losers map pick now of our map 1 for FGCU to the map of Split. And we got to hope it doesn't turn into one of those halves where it's like, okay, we just won 10-2, and now we're about to get slaughtered 10-2 in the opposing side, because it's so darn annoying when we see that on this map.
Yeah, and I don't think Split's really one of those maps. I mean, to some degree, we've seen some adjustments over time. Teams have gone ahead and gotten a little more comfortable here. It doesn't seem like one side of the fair anymore, like what it used to be, thankfully. And I think it's just more so to kind of just how time's gone along. You see the different adaptations. You still see some flexibility here in the selections. And even then, in this map, you do still see a lot of adjustments of the agents that are being selected still coming into play. So keep in mind, like, say, for Ascent, we haven't touched Jet in a while, haven't touched KO in a while, haven't touched Sova in a while. Like, everybody's just kind of just been there. And right, it's like, those are our vanilla guys, you know? We're just good and steady, leave it as is. That's our, if we ever want to do promo material, we're just do this exact mirror matchup inside of Valorant on this map with these agents, like it's a perfect utopia. Split is where things get a little more nitty-gritty. Keep in mind, we still have Sky on this map, and she just recently got kind of tweaked to some degree as well. Some people say a pretty large nerf. I'd say still very, very relevant nonetheless. And even then, you still have the breaches that are coming through and play on this map every now and again. You have the controller differentials where sometimes you'll go Astra and Omen, you'll go Viper and Omen, you'll go this Astra and Viper. It doesn't really matter. There's diversity here. And even then, you also have a diversity in terms of the kinds of compositions of the roles, not just the agents, where you can go for that double initiator. And here, sometimes we do see double duels being employed because of the necessity that Raze is.
Oh, I do like seeing double duelist on this map, but it feels like too many times we see the double duelist, you know, return and Split purely because the primary duelist can't play Raze or refuses to get off of Jet. And I would really hope that's not the case coming out here, because Poco saw a lot of good glimpses for Jet, but the two main problems we had with Poco in that last map was not clearing corners in the early stages of their attack. It didn't feel like they had a great understanding of where they were going to see Florida Gulf Coast lying in wait on defense, and it led to a lot of, I won't say baiting attacks, but kind of baity initiation, where you just think you're out in the open and safe, and you didn't actually have the full piece of the puzzle. And the other problem, passivity, especially on the defense. And if you're bringing that Jet, you're expecting them to be in the face, willing to use that tailwind to get out of dodge, to get into a safety net, into a safer position, because 9 times out of 10, there's no KO here to use a 0 point against you and deny that utility of you. And you've got to be in the face when it comes to mid. You've got to be in the face when it comes to these main exits. And you've got to be willing to take a fight, even if your life's going to be forfeited immediately afterwards.
Oh, they're going to raid this. There's no way you don't know that the player's going to be sitting around here.
Oh my God.
Spike down A.
Like, it's a smoke up in your face and spawn. You know they're going to push that. There's... I'm at a loss. What? We're talking about losses. Clemson already lost the majority of their team. 1v3. I mean, right clicks can do crazy things. Having a coach, you can also do insane things!
If you want something done right, do it yourself.
Heroes. Clemson Orange, just plain and simple, has more heroes.
Go to the encyclopedia and look up visceral reaction, and that is exactly what just happened out of me and Dallas's mouth. The just total shock and awe of Jax pulling that off. You can tell Dallas was already at his wit's end, having to deal with Triple R, getting away with that out the gate, and somehow Clemson not reading that when they absolutely 100%
I think when you mess up, you deserve to be punished. Plain and simple.
That's what it should be.
That's how I was raised. So help me God. I love my parents, but apparently their logic don't apply to Valorant. Maybe that's why boomers hate the game.
I gotta leash you in, Dallas, before you start saying some other stuff. I gotta rein you in for a second. There goes Triple R with the Sheriff. Down goes Poco and the hero of Jax from the previous round. FGCU, though, in a scenario where Clemson and Orange are coming into this one with SMGs and have the gun advantage, are actually coming out with a positive position to work from. And with Guiding Light still rounding up the corners into tower, and a flank that's been brewed up from underneath inside mid through alley and down through sewer, that A site is a death trap. And I think they're aware of that. So they're sending all three remaining players in through defender spawn, leaving them to wait here, but they still want A. They're thinking they're outsmarting FGCU. FGCU don't care. They still want this.
This could be timing and a half, because I mean, even then, if they already make the read on players, a lot of people are going to be heaven. And even if you get the smoke off, that is well played here from Clemson. Just kind of a double juke, breaking ankles, just trying to cut off whoever you can. But even then, still, Epoch having some pressure there, having that smoke up towards top. You don't need to watch that too much. Just hold that screen, hold that play. And even in a 3v4, I mean, guns now being in the hands of these FGCU players, feasible to some degree. These sheriffs, this is where these excel in these kind of close quarter lineups, because now they have these guys put into a trap, all cornered up.
And with your team having pivoted for FGCU up into tower, you can collect those two SMGs there and just rush down Clemson, using their own weapons against them and making up for the big mistake that was allowing Jax the double head tap click right at the end of the previous round. And a second map now in a row in the same series, Dallas, that breaks the mold of Valorant and falls 1-1 for the very first half of the game of that map. It's crazy to see, as you only usually see it maybe once a series. We've now seen it twice. And it was all off of Clemson Orange stealing the previous round and then not understanding space control and not pursuing for a refrag on an open man up inside tower, falling back when it absolutely should have gone the other way when you had 4 players swinging them. Great round for FGCU. Great read by Clemson to rotate back around and lapping, but giving them tower, giving them those SMGs, toss the weapons in front of you and lead them back with you towards defender spawn. Don't let them have those for free.
And even then, I'd say just more so warning yourself on the A side after you found all that space. I mean, you're looking good. You had what seemed like the entire defender side of the map. And then you just kind of back up and play a little more lenient. And then just you kind of, once again, say all that real estate you had control of, you just give up again. You're not really setting up these checkpoints. You're not really punishing them for having to swing or go for that retake. You're not setting up these kinds of stages of the map that they're going to have to go through. It's just like one overwhelming force of just taking you by storm. So Clemson Orange, once again, kind of learned their lesson to some degree, having now another round to play with, having guns to some degree once more with these sheriffs in hand, but as it should be. I mean, with these guns to work with, all very, very big FGCU, they can just really spray things and find effect.
Well, it's Jackson and 1vx. How is this one going to turn out? Hopefully not the same as previously, and that will be the case. Not a single one allowed to them this time. And a flawless round, shockingly, for FGCU. I know it's an eco round they're facing off against, but Clemson having an inability to gain a single frag in that round now puts them in a spot where, yeah, they can buy up, they can have rifles, but with little to no success in the previous round, you're not tallying up the ult pips very well. You know that they're going to start coming up for FGCU fairly soon. Triple R already has theirs, and Fox should not be too far away, considering they're at 4 frags. They do only have 1 death, which means they're only at that 5 pit margin. FGCU are going to still be in a much better spot overall here. And this is where that A push, I think, needs to start be pivoting in through mid, taking control of that alleyway, Dallas, and putting more pressure on B, because you're just going to see FGCU stack up this A side at range and take advantage of the rifles that now both teams are going to have.
Or even then, just playing the site. I mean, whether or not they're playing range, play to close, it seems like they have a much more comfortable time of holding this A side than they do on B, and that's just because we haven't seen B. Maybe it could be worse, and maybe we could just bite our tongues and say, oh my God, your attacking is abysmal. But I did think Clemson, they don't want to push up too much. They don't want to show us that. They don't want to kind of chance it. But already, one thing you can take is the middle of the map, because you're doing it pretty darn slow. You have no pressure towards B, and now you're punished because of it. 3 guns to turn over to the side of FGCU once more. They're going to go ahead and make the most of that. And even then, they're going to go ahead and kind of peek on playing out and throwing this utility right towards A main. It's just a game of information. FGCU are not only winning that one, but they're also winning the fights as well.
Where's your flank watch, Clemson? Where's the utility to keep the rear at bay? It's totally absent. And I get it, your entire lineup isn't indicative of having that. You didn't bring a KJ, you didn't bring a chamber even, something like that to have something to watch your flank. But if you didn't, you need to be even more cognizant of it. And that's just totally absent here, and it's costing you rounds. You get rushed now upon by Kyle and Shu. Fox is working in from the elbow side there in the back side. They get away with one. That's fine. But it's Kylan who steals the limelight with the final 2 frags. FGCU just played that round perfectly. A slow, drawn-out draw from Clemson Orange. You know you're making a lot of noise towards Mail on the top of Heaven on B. You know that they're going to be distracted if they are inside of mid. How do you play that? Work your way through market. Worm your way out through garage and in through market. Take that space and catch them off guard, and you did so perfectly. It's just a beautiful execution defensively from them.
I mean, just seeing the way that FGCU are playing this, obviously a little more comfortable on the defending side here. I mean, I think this map, as we mentioned already, it's not really a one-sided affair. I mean, typically you would say, obviously in the early days of this map, over and over again, I would sing the praises of saying the defense would always hold the reins on this map, no matter what the circumstance may be. But we've had enough agents now released. We have enough lineups and kind of study going into the game to understand that attack can have some pressure here. But it really comes down to how you present that, whether or not you have it warranted. And while we do have ideas and we have execution, whether or not it be half-cheeked, as you mentioned earlier, it's there. But Clemson doesn't have the warrant behind it. They don't have the coverage there to understand and say, okay, this is doable. We're not going to be punished for it immediately. And punishment is what FGCU is doing on a repeated basis. But around like this so far, where you're able to pick up a gun and push all the way into spawn, it's not really about punishment. It's just more about the space you already have. Now can the rest of the team catch up to capitalize off of it?
Another angle there where Poco is trying to check a corner that's not necessary from the angle they're worming their way in from. Oh my god. Jax, you can hit the first round absolute flick, but you can't do it here in this one, which is a little unfortunate. But it's fine. It is what it is. Clemson Orange will not have that man advantage with the Halo Jorge's kill onto Stuffs. Epoch in a fight against Triple R. They're using the Showstopper and a 1v1 of the player towards defender spawn, and you didn't even know where Fox was whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, Epoch, they didn't respect that one man.
It's true.
And they learned their lesson. So I think Clemson has a little more of an idea of saying, okay, that makes sense. It was Epoch who popped it. So, I mean, can you blame the guy? Still, Epoch being the last one surviving, having to swing out until 1v2 or one's just holding spike, one's holding angle. It's just too big of a gate to have to bust through with one man's power. So, I mean, the 2 players surviving as well in that round, being the 2 top frags to the team of FGCU, I mean, that just makes matters even worse.
Consistency has been a problem I think we're seeing from Clemson Orange. And usually you'd say, okay, they're hitting the same objective over and over again. That's consistent, right, Dallas? They're just going to the A side so often. That's consistent, but it's a consistent failure. That's the issue. Your post plan on A is poor. It's doing you nothing. It's finding you nothing. You're trying to get those players off and make up for the mistakes you had previously where you stacked 3 players up in a slow drawn out round in the back of sight and you kind of get funneled in upon and they kind of run you down with the SMGs they stole from you. Yes, I get that's a constant fear for you now. You're a little traumatized after that result. You can't send everyone away from it. You can't hold completely varying angles. You still need a defense in the site, and you're not post-plant positioning for the right plant. They start off this round quite well. Halo Jorge refragged back after taking down Fox, but their teammate off on the A site catches 2 unaware inside tower, leading to a 2-player defense from FGCU, where each side has to peek 3 basically, and Triple R couldn't see any of them before Poco got a great shot.
And even then, good reads here going on. You know, already the players have been knocked off back towards that spawn, and the players over towards that B main area have been knocked off, where you're saying 1 player remaining. You're checking everywhere for this KO. I mean, props to Clemson. Obviously, I mean, a lot of people will be laughing at a point like this where you're saying, good God, it's just one guy, get on the site, but still, you got to give respect where it's due. You can't freak out. You can't get overzealous. You got to get the round over as much as you can and make sure not to sacrifice as much in the meantime. So, looking still with 3 ultimates here, just holding on to them, building these things up. Epoch just used the Showstopper in the last round, didn't really get anything with it, but was able to stall for at least some amount of time. Now it comes down to the hold and whether or not this guy can go ahead and once again get it. Because Clemson Orange, they're going to use this to some extent, I'd say, to a timeout. I'm surprised Kylan isn't just kind of opting to save this, but instead going for exit frags. So that makes sense. Go ahead, def it up in the Discord call. Let everybody just kind of discuss what's going to happen the next round. Figure out what happened there. Meanwhile, you're just holding your angles and seeing what you can get. You got to get out of dodge when it's all said and done. So for Clemson now getting their second, it's still early in the game. We kind of talked about how Clemson's lacking consistency, how they're not looking all that hot. It's still very early on. Can't really chalk everything up to chance just yet. There's still a lot of game to go.
A lot of things for Clemson Orange to digest in that round after the success. One, B-side's pretty darn good. Hey, we get a plant down. We do plant and play out for the same default we did previously. The 3-2 split. Most of the time they stack the 5 up on A initially and put the 2 in through sewers, but they don't have to do so. They can play a fight inside of garage. They can contend with the pressure that Florida Gulf Coast are trying to put out early. And this is where Florida Gulf Coast, if they're thinking about it wisely, won't apply as much pressure. They'll fall a little bit further back. They'll change up the strategy. They'll change the levels of the game and change their variable positions to make sure that Clemson can't play the same exact way and win the same exact way, which is the only way they've won to this point. Great whirl, able to solo in Epoch and closed and secured by Fox afterwards. Clemson Orange, you did so well last round and you lose your entry here, but that's where Poco steps up with a Blade Storm, sitting inside of mid with no one to help them. And that's why you send out a dark cover over towards ropes to maybe give yourself a chance to work in from mail.
Even then, I like the fact that we're actually seeing Clemson split things up, look for some B-man control, not give up that entire half of the map right from the get-go over and over again. I mean, still having at least one player there, and obviously putting your most competent player so far, Halo, who's been just an absolute unit in this game thus far, allocating him there, saying more likely he can take his ones, he can win his fights. But that guy didn't like give a little more information, even then you're not expecting the slip to already occur. Fox didn't make that call out, but maybe it could have been spotted on the minimap. Who knows with those swings and how they're occurring, but regardless, one by one, slipped through the cracks. Fox is not snipped out once more. Ropes are just completely open. And FGC, you were just mowing these guys down. I mean, Halo could close things out. I mean, you know the guy's always good for one. But good for 5? That's just not something you get very often.
Another round falling back the other way, and FGCU are now just 1 round away from breaking even, guaranteed at halftime, and it doesn't seem like they'll stop anytime soon. And when you're winning these rounds concurrently and finding really good success, you maybe expect you're doing that off the back of good ultimate usages, and there's none. FGCU haven't had the need to pop them. They have 3 of them at the ready, and Fox and Kyle and Chu are a single round more likely than not away from tapping in their own ultimates to be ready on the board. And Clemson Orange are using those. They are trying to create space. They are zoning and warding with the showstopper. They're popping the Blaze Storm to save eco. They're trying to utilize the utility from their Viper before they fall off almost immediately on an execution into sight, where maybe they could get a Viper spin and post plant down. They're working and worming their way through. But the problem comes afterwards that FGCU are just gunning better and positioning better, which means there's no chance for those to come forward. As the Seekers come out this round for Clemson Orange, and an even 1-for-1 trade with Poco getting taken down by a nano swarm up inside of heaven. The B site is a tough spot for Clemson.
Even then, I mean, already B side, it looks like everywhere on the map, quite frankly. I mean, besides that A side, that was the one side of the map that they actually felt confident in fighting in. And already when you look at everywhere else, they're just kind of playing this game of discovery rather than execution. So over and over and over again, they're taking these fights very slowly, still trying to figure out where these players may be allocated, and never really quite sure where the next fight's going to take place. And that's really starting to bite them, because it seems like their duelists can't really properly swing these angles when they don't know where they're going next. You can't have this double initiator, or better get this double duelist, set things up and just make that pressure present when you don't know where you really want to bring it. I mean, obviously with the double duelist, you have that leniency of being able to provide that pressure around the map and kind of go for 2 hits at once. But when you're not fighting for that mid control right from the get-go, right from that first round, and making it prevalent, and better yet, making it powerful, that's just not one step that Clemson's missing. It's nearly half the whole staircase that they have to go ahead and climb before they get themselves to a point where we can really see this game start to work in their favor. So once again, opting for that kind of slow A push. You see the 3-2 split over toward that B side, giving it the middle of the map. If you're going to give up something, I say for the defender side, you give up the middle. I mean, that just makes complete sense, because you're opting and you're forcing to split things off when they want to lap around, comparing to finding this culmination of efforts through the middle, through your flank, where you just really can't fight that. But already just looking for any kind of leverage, any kind of pressure, any kind of real estate whatsoever. And this sneak through onto B site may be massive, because that turret being just not sniffing anything out, this is Poco's round to go insane, if possible.
Blar gets the spot up in the backside of Alley. And FGCU now have a permanent reminder that Clemson Orange have control over, for the most part, this B side. But Spike isn't there. And you could do a cheeky move here if you drop the spike and then have the from the shadows used to pick it back up if you felt you needed that extra bit of time. But look at the play that Clemson are going for. Leaving 2 players behind, 1 in rope, 1 in bottom mid. It was the perfect way to catch 2 or more players off guard and give yourself a man advantage in a post-plant scenario to then step up to assist after the fact. And it's played out to near perfection. One of the best strategies we've seen come forward out of the side of Clemson Orange. And they haven't found an answer past that point. The lockdown does not seem to matter. Zuko around the corner. Diffuser has been taken down. It's just Kylan Chu forced to fight up 3. Close. And it was so unbelievably close for FGCU with the attempt there of that cosmic divide. But it doesn't matter in the end. And Clemson Orange will get their 3rd round. But they still need 3 more for the end of this half to break even.
I mean, props to Clemson there for going for that round, really committing to that B site, and then finding themselves the result they need. I'm surprised they didn't go for the A site in that situation, considering that, I mean, you saw the full rotate. Jets already slipped through. You know rotation's going to occur as a reaction to that, saying, okay, I now see Astra, I see KJ. They probably have some flex player towards the middle that's now leaning towards this B site because we have that control, and they don't know how many players have slipped through. And then you can go for A, and then who cares? You have 2 duelists. You may have lost Poco, but that real estate, Poco's done his job, got in that space and played that distraction game. But still, looking around the map, it happens again. So, I mean, we see Clemson look at their best when they have lurkers everywhere, when you don't know where the next fight's being taken from. But how rare is it that you get enough players set up around the map where you can just kind of swing on your own terms and nobody's even looking in your direction because you're blindsided by it? Not very often. So maybe for every 3 out of 9 rounds. And that's the ratio we're looking at.
Shots connecting, Triple R goes down, but not before finding one of their own, and Kylan Chu even chopping a player off for Clemson Orange. 2 players remaining, Spike has to go down, and Halo Jorge is nowhere close to assist this player. And even though they do get a strike, it's a tiny second too late. And it's just Halo Jorge who has it from the shadows. That spike's going to be collected. They'll rotate to the A site. They want this plant at the very least. We've seen what Epoch can do in a 1vx scenario in a post plant. What can Halo Jorge do? And Jacoby's going to stand over that spike to make sure that if they from the shadows, it would bump them off of the collection. And then Stuff's going to go for the kill. And they didn't even have to worry about it. So the ultimate's still there. It just doesn't matter.
I mean, swinging that towards the back. I mean, not even having the knife out, looking back towards that spawn. Better yet, having it all the way until you're looking at the hall on that back spawn side is wild. But regardless, for Clemson here, another round. I mean, we talked about the ratio, at least for these 2 teams, and it's 3 out of every single 9. So, I mean, hey, maybe you can luck out, find one of those earlier on, but it's just not looking too hot for you. FGCU, they don't have that many ults, and that's the one benefit you could use for yourself here. Kind of just play back, know that's there, and just go ahead and counteract. Do the exact same thing somewhere else and find the same exact result of nothing. But anyways, you've got real estate, and that's what really matters.
Triple R is going to hold right outside of the exit from this smoke, and a great flick to 1. They reload afterwards, didn't have the ammo in the clip, and it breaks even on sight. But Heaven Control isn't there for the attacking side of Clemson Orange, and they're moving this 1 player in from mid a bit too late. And though they do see Stuffs to the final moment, it doesn't matter in the sight control. Just is breaking even, reaching its boiling point, but yet still failing to cook what's necessary in the objective. FGCU swing Kylan Chu from the flank, and it's just Epoch with 8 HP. What can you ask of one man? We've seen what he can do. But it's just too much in this scenario on split. FGCU will get to 8 in this half, and very well could go 9 if the eco for Clemson can't make this round work either.
I mean, you're at a point where, quite frankly, I mean, this is very clearly compared to Ascent, where it was Clemson's selection. We saw some early dominance out of them. I mean, but ever since then, it was just kind of went back and forth to some degree, especially in that second half. There was time there, and it was also an attempt of a comeback from FGCU in that first half to make it close to some degree, just off to start. just to kind of show that when we go into the second half, it will look feasible. We get the pistol, we get the second, and then we're right back to ground zero. The thing is, FGC, you are actually showing that this map is legitimately a specialist pick for them. They have a lot more control of this defensive side. They're not letting things slip through for no reason. They're checking all their corners. They're winning the majority of their fights. They know the holes. Finally, with a little bit of a change of pace here, Epoch with that judge in hand, we're seeing the actual potential of these agents being realized, knowing that, well, while you do have 2 duelists, throw one out there. Even though if it feels like they just kind of die for nothing, so long as you get that space, it's for something.
Jacoby down to 30 HP, needs to find the right space to swing in for a kill. They'll have to wait for the pressure to broil up inside of CTV instead. That's where Triple R comes into the woodworks. Jack's in the Viper's pit, trying to give themselves some safety net with that judge. But you got to swing back of elbow, and FGC you need to do so quickly. Paint shells are out. The Tasmanian Tiger is cleared. But it just isn't enough space to be guaranteed, and you have to use that breach utility correctly. Fox gets one with it, but Jack's still inside the smoke. That was really just walking into your own demise for FGCU, and I think they were aware of that. But you still break through this first half, double the stat line of Clemson Orange. A huge grave they'll need to dig themselves out of, but if they take the pistol, you knock off half the dirty work you've got to do for yourself.
Yeah, pistol isn't knocking this completely off and just utterly mitigating it, but it is going to go ahead and make your attempts that much more doable. I mean, you won the last pistol. It was a hero attempt. So, I mean, you're saying, hey, it's doable here as well. What more can we really do? But even then, once again, it comes down to the point of expectation on that first half. And now it's more of a surprise element here in the second. So Clemson could use that, but I just don't think the confidence is there after seeing what they've done. But the setup sure as heck is. Everybody just right down the middle, and you see that Snake by just being ready to roll to go ahead and choke off some of these players. But are they ready for the sewer push as well? Because with all the feet moving that direction and a much further spawn away for that attacker side, it's an easy call for them to just say, back up, because none of that's going to hit us.
Rushing through the B side of Garage. Everyone's up in heaven. An interesting attempt here from Clemson Orange by all account. This is actually quite entertaining. But the frenzy, though limited in ammo for its magazine, can spray down plenty of people just as quick as it can do so and run out. An FGCU's attack out of the gates of Garage was met by an equal, if not better, force on the high ground. But Star Wars doesn't always have to be correct. And it puts them at a disadvantage in the pistol round, where you need to win it if you're Clemson to, like I said, unbury yourselves in that deep grave. It just got deeper, and you're now digging yourself out with a trowel instead of a shovel.
Yeah, 9-4 on the board. Pistol round 1, and Clemson, I don't think, has the prowess to win that second round like we saw FGCU do to surmount for that 4-1 lead. Exactly as a replication of what we saw on Ascent. I mean, it's just looking at what FGCU can rebound from. They have control to this degree. I expect them to at least hold it down. I expect them to at least be able to execute and finish the game off of that, because knowing Ascent, we already knew it was going to happen. But I mean, already here on this map and seeing the kind of prowess they had early on, you're expecting to say, all right, send this one home. So if they hit round number 10, obviously with the pistol round going underway, and then this one already now looking like it's going to be seemingly finding a conclusion here soon with the post blank coming here, it's, I mean, what can you really do here for Clemson Orange? They haven't really had too much of an attempt so far. They have that one hero sheriff, but I mean, that sheriff that we've seen have success out of these teams thus far has come from, okay, we can push these sites, or better, we just push right off the get-go and don't even let them have a chance to find the site because the timer isn't playing against you.
Jacoby's trapped down below rope here outside of heaven. And FGCU's aggression that they've just been rolling up the last 2 rounds is continuing here, unfurling off towards the B side. And look at this post plant. What are they wrapping around here for? It's a straight aggression from Jacoby. I love the idea. I love the push in to secure those picks to make sure they can't die off the spike. It's beautiful. It's a perfect punishment for Clemson Orange, who have... what was the phrase you said? If you make mistakes, you deserve to be punished. That was what it came down to in round 2. They made mistakes. They didn't find kills in the execute. They weren't able to close out kills. And they just play a second round where you need the extra credits. You need more than just an extra pip for the ultimate count, because you only have an arguable 3 more rounds, possibly worst case scenario, to get ultimates to try and contend with. You gotta be a little bit better, a little bit smarter than that. At this rate, we will see a third map, and I don't know how it's going to play out if Bind is on the chopping block and Clemson were barely able to win out on their own map pick.
I mean, yeah, and even then, I mean, the aggression. I mean, Ascent, you can be a lot more particular about the fights you take. Everybody knows that map to some degree. I mean, the angles are just tried and true. They're easy to hold. They're easy to swing. I mean, you've done the map. You've nailed it down to where it's you know it like the back of your hand. But in these maps like Bind, where things start to move faster and faster and faster, and you can really just start to kind of forget, you really get punished even more so just for not making that last second count. I mean, at milliseconds count on that map compared to every map where it feels like more half seconds do. So buying a thing for Clemson, especially when we saw some hesitancy in these retakes, those initial picks, and some missed angles here and there, especially with Poco opting for that operator, not really having the showing of a lifetime here when you're saying, get off that gun, you got to run a rifle, what they're really going to surmount.
This plant will go down here for FGCU. Rotating away from the B site. They kind of shake things up. Shaken, not stirred for Clemson Orange. And, well, these are wrenching the things with the first blood off towards Epoch. And you have no great point of entry in for yourself. As Poco is just sitting a little bit too far back and needs to extend out towards CCTV. They will get up a kill onto Stas. And a great flick to Fox. But both players for Clemson Orange are down to less than 25 HP. And you're asking literally everything out of a no-chance scenario. And it's just Poco, rushed in by Jacoby. Headshot to secure. They only needed a body shot. They were also down to 20 HP. That's why you send the breach in that scenario. When they're already down out for the count, just make matters worse. Poco gets out of here and will move in away to a space where maybe Triple R would push for this kill. And Kylan was trying to hold a cutoff.
Oh, sucks.
What an awkward ending firefight. But it is FGCU going up to 11, and Clemson, you got to call a timeout 50,000 times previously, but you only get the one, so you do what you can do.
I mean, and this should have been used, I mean, obviously for this half. There's not really any earlier that you can go, but considering that first half, I mean, just the way things have gone up and the way this map's been tossed up, it's coming down a lot heavier than how you threw it up for Clemson. I mean, knowing that this is just an absolute hellfire being rained down, that there's just not much you can really do in a situation like this. This is on the defensive side of the map where you either push up early, find yourself the initial blood to where you had those early number advantages, or honestly, you just take the full beating on site. And I don't think they really want to do either. That first option, as we mentioned, fights aren't really going in their direction. Even when they expect the fights and they're holding the angles, things aren't doing all that well for them. And even then, when they were on the attacking side, they were asked to swing those angles. Things just weren't working out for them. And now that they have to take these fights on FGCU's terms, where they're just kind of, once again, they're not going for the defaults. They're not looking for mid-pressure. They just say, let's push site. We got so much initiating power. We have so many flashes that we can just afford this. And I think that's the right idea to go about it, quite frankly. I mean, that's the biggest thing that you were kind of lacking out of Crimson during that first half, where you had the power of two duelists, but I just didn't see that speed. I didn't see that aggression. It felt almost like they had two Sentinels instead.
It just seems like a huge piece of the puzzle that's missing that shouldn't be missing, because they have everything at their fingertips. But it still feels like there's this glaring weakness to Clemson Orange. And maybe it's because they got a really rough start to this first half, or sorry, to the second half. Stat lines can still be pretty predominantly one side of the other for the map of Split. Not as bad as it used to be, like we mentioned beforehand, but it can still be pretty dominated. But they haven't made any recovery. It feels like the mental isn't there. They have to change up how their operators, their agents here are playing, right? I mean, it's a bit rough. It's not exactly what you want to see from them, especially for a team that we know can play exceptionally well. We saw how good they were on map 1, and we need to see that kind of transgress into a second, and, well, at this point, probably the third, because you're 2 rounds away for FGCU, and you've got first blood in this one. You're looking at the possibility of a 12-4 split in Triple R, already knowing that there's a kill off on no man's land on A, and with plenty of time for the recovery of Clemson Orange to rotate that way, it's just going to be 1 or 2 players here on B. And you've got 5 players behind you, and there's the intel that Halo's at least here.
Yeah, I'll let you know the one's already on, and I mean, sure, a player's going to be there no matter what. Looking at the pressure coming through, Fox is already on site. You can probably push towards the back of that. Have players just setting up. Full post plant. Who isn't there? Kylan. You're not worried about that, though. Mid. It is cut off, so good here for Jax, but I mean, the rest of the team still. You have to go for this retake. You have to make it worth it. I mean, this is basically the game, quite frankly. Map point 12-4, good God. I mean, we've maybe seen it before. I can't really remember it because, I mean, of how little it's been.
Jacoby off by themselves. A recovery by Clemson Orange is quite nice, and it was a bit of a shocking result, knowing that FGCU had that man advantage heading into the site, but not having the control of Heaven. And when Split was talked about 2 years back, Dallas, what was the end-all be-all? Was mid-control. It gave you the ability to rotate in through a secondary angle, the only tertiary angle 9 times out of 10 on these objectives. Less so on A because you have the ability to go up ramp instead. But on B specifically, you kind of have to have control of Mail and then up through Heaven. They didn't have that. They went for the 5-stack out through Garage. And then a pistol round, like we saw in round 13, it can work. But it isn't necessarily the case when you're stepping in with a rifle on rifle scenario. And Clemson Orange will take the win because of that. But they head into this next round, and you're seeing another default where mid control is the most important factor here for FGCU. 3 players want to fight for this control, strip the man out of Heaven, rip the control of ropes away from them. Because even if they don't like B on a push, they can rotate through ropes and get back control of A.
Oh, looking for early control here in the middle of the map. That's what really matters here for FGCU. Obviously, kind of hit this note 10,000 times by now, but the one thing that isn't hitting is going to be those flashes and those follow-up shots to kind of capitalize out the back of it. So Clemson Orange getting themselves an early pick. This is something they're not very used to, so we can obviously see how that's going to change up the pace of the game a little bit, whether they're going to play more slow, whether they're actually going to speed things up, maybe push the spawn to some degree. But FGCU, the ball is in their court. They're the ones who have to really kind of make sure how to compensate for this. And I think this is going to be the biggest decision of the game. You show that if they win a round like this, the resilience between this team and what they can accomplish on a round-to-round basis and what happens when the going gets tough. Because Clemson Orange, as we've seen, they have a tendency to just kind of fold. They still want to go for these rounds. They still want to kind of commit to these defaults, even when they have less resources at hand. And meanwhile, FGCU, they still just find a way to kind of slip through the cracks, get themselves something, and just commit to a site because they know they can win those gunfights.
Yeah, and they're very good at them. They know that they can hold these angles. They know the right angles to do so because they just use them against Clemson Orange. And Clemson Orange aren't playing the exact same things, but they're playing them well enough that FGCU have a good enough read on it, by all accounts. But it's Epoch that rushes into the backside of Elbow and closes out stuffs. Jacoby up inside of Heaven, has assistance from 2 more players, and Sight is now flipped on its head. How do you recover from this one? Will you just continue to play this post-plant scenario perfectly? Kylan Chu down through ramp, working in from main, taking down 2. Zuko now out on the spike, diffuses it to half and stripped of their life by Jacoby. That is how you play a site post-plant. Not a 3-man stack on site, sitting static behind the wall and praying they won't see you. Put your players in tower and plant it behind that wall.
Being confident in your kills and just taking those fights on your turn. Plain and simple. Double initiators, double duelists, doesn't matter. You have utility there to go ahead, to stall the game, to stall these players, to make sure to kind of take these fights in your own term. And we just don't really see that same control being replicated by Clemson Orange earlier on, and FGCU showing a masterclass of what it should look like. So obviously, I mean, if you showed a round like that, just go ahead and cancel out the numbers across the board. You're saying who probably has been winning this map, and even you ask any professional, and they're going to say, well, FGCU probably picked this thing from the way it's the looks of it. So good early start once again. Having the tools, but now in a round like this, the showstopper comes through. Where is it coming from? Well, it's coming from B Tower, but it's not pushing from there, quite frankly. It's another denial tool by Epoch, and it surmount to 0 damage. And meanwhile, FGCU now have a lot more control of that, saying that green border's now gone. We can go right back what we wanted to set up earlier on. And if we need space, good God, we got all the tools to grab it because we got a lockdown. What are they going to do? Nothing about it. And they're a post plant when they want to start to kind of get things underway. What else do we have? A Rolling Thunder. And what can they do? Absolutely nothing about it. The plant can do one thing that saves you here.
It's a great shot by Poco. Has assistance from the sky. Your Astra. Do they know? Are they aware? What is triple? Triple
has
to get pushed there at all? They don't get tripped there at all. Where is Poco
it has
going?
the knife out.
Where was Poco going? Why are you in attacker spawn right now? You weren't even lapping. You turned around to head back to A.
Satchel out.
I can't believe what I'm seeing in this position. They get another kill. Give them something, I guess. But you gotta extend in through garage. You gotta pressure triple R. Because you know that flank is there. And FGCU are given too much leeway at this point. Hit the shots, Fox. Good for 1-2. It's a shot to the third, and Fox! You saw the end it! Huge with the 3K to give FGCU a second map here and move and force onto a third.
We were playing The Voice, is what that was, and it was just, I'll take the fight. No, I'll take the fight. And it's just, dude, what is this? I'm at a loss of words. I mean, it's third map, so I mean, good for FGCU. Very, very clearly. I mean, you go to Ascent. We talked about how close it was. It doesn't really matter. We're saying every single team knows that. Sure, Split. Some teams, or most teams, better yet, have proven that, okay, we know it to some degree. It's not really the biggest deal in the world. We understand what's going on. And especially after that first map, you're expecting Clemson to kind of bring the game, and at least, especially with the double duelist, start strong and really find that speed and aggression. And rather than looking like a running back, they were just kind of sitting on the sidelines, just waiting for the game to come to them. And that just was not going to happen.
Yeah, and in that last round, you highlighted it previously, and I brought it back up again. If you make mistakes, you deserve to be punished. And what in the world was going on for Clemson Orange and Poco and attacker spawn and the rotate back? They made mistakes. They deserved to be punished, and they were going unpunished up until the final 3K there from Fox.
Yeah.
So deserved, very much so in that final round. And a very deserved map. Dominate the first half, leave almost no room for question in the second, and secure your victory to now force our third map of bind. 13-8 on Ascent and ending at the total reversal of a 13-5 on Splits. They're taking their map picks and they're doing it pretty well, it seems. But now we're heading to the kind of consolation map pick. Never truly anyone's map pick, but you're both leading up to it in the first place. In fact, I would dare say was the last team to ban's pick, since they technically are the ones who choose the better of the two maps that are remaining on that list. But it's Bind coming up for our third. Dallas, any guesses on how this one may end up?
I mean, I got to put my chips on FGCU here. I mean, looking at that last map, just looking at the confidence of these players, them just taking fights on their own terms, I think the transitions to Bind a lot better. It's kind of that fever dream we had, or at least for the side of FGCU, of that early game we saw of Ascent. I mean, they were climbing their way back up. They found some consistency. They had the resilience there. And they were just kind of getting back in the game like it never really scathed them. Meanwhile, you saw that, I mean, right off the get-go, losing that second round just killed Clemson for the rest of the entirety of that map. And knowing that even then, when they were hesitant to swing on Ascent, they just outright refused on the map of Split. And now here on Bind, where it's a requirement, it's another raise map where it's just kind of fast-paced. It kind of spells the same kind of toil and trouble.
Yeah, I hate to fall into recency bias, you know, like it feels like that's what happens a lot of times. You just see a really good map too for one team and you just really want to, you know, pick up that team. But I think like what you mentioned, you know, breaking down where we're seeing the strengths from FGCU, there's not a whole lot of similarities between Bind and Split, but just the breakdown of the way that they played the map, the ability to swing corners effectively, actually clearing corners, better gunfights, better pizza. I'm not going to jump into that next bit. They just really looked good, and it's hard to stray away from them. So I have to give the same edge to FGCU, but we have seen a really, really damn good Clemson, and I don't think that they are going to shy away from that same success we've seen from them. How few it was in our last map and how often it was on our first map, I think they're going to show up to give us a really good third map on Bind, even if they don't manage to win it out. I think they're going to be a team that's still going to be looked at and saying, okay, we just need to really work on counteracting this Clemson team and making sure we punish them for their mistakes, because there's a lot, and they got to look at it and say, okay, we got to stop making these specific mistakes, which is very doable for this roster.
The crazy thing to me is how, I mean, this is the map that we have a lot of diversity still open up in the air. I mean, we've seen Geckos be selected. We've seen Chambers be selected. We see Yoru's now being selected, which I still don't want to take for granted. I don't really want to mention it anymore, but I mean, I do have to bring attention to the fact that there was days where we would pray for a singular Yoru pick, and now we're in kind of a new era where we see him on the regular basis here in Bind. I mean, just seeing the elevation of this game and what we've seen over time. The Yoru remains out there. Just want to give all the credit in the world to them for putting in the work and showing that he is usable at least somewhere. But knowing Bind once again, seeing Poco on that selection specifically, knowing that Chamber is an option somewhere, it's Poco finally learned his lesson. Where we talked about where the operator didn't really feel like the best thing in the world for him, has he finally understood that maybe there's some merit behind that actually be on a Vandal and actually swinging and initiating fights. And while sure you can do that on Jet, this is kind of where this map, Jet is usable, sure, but Raze is just that much better, and Yoru is going to be a much better catalyst for what you really want to do, and still having to run that rifle in the meantime. So I don't think we're going to see too many operators, if any at all, which I'll be happy to see. Kind of engages these fights a little more, puts the blood on the site rather than those early kind of lineups and lanes. But speaking of lanes, B Long looking pretty darn crowded as we get things started.
Fox sends out a paint shell to try to keep them at bay. Is Flash the process? Paint shell back in return. It's a hefty amount of utility sent and spent into that B gateway. Straight into Octagon with not much success being brought out from it from either side, as any damage that has been dealt can be utilized to regrowth immediately after the fact, as we're seeing being done currently by Florida Gulf Coast to bring them back up to full HP. And same thing as well for Clemson. They left two players prowling inside showers as well as up through A short. This is the site they're probably going to hit at this point, as Spike is up there with them, though TP is a possibility. It doesn't seem like the best of choices when they don't even have a full idea of the control of this objective, and they've expended these smokes. The great usage of those sky smokes to cut off the sight lines up towards heaven and towards the back of sight.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see the Brimstone and the Viper have just so much impact here. I mean, that is a guaranteed pick for this map whatsoever. I mean, already 3 of the 4, or 3 of the 5 is just kind of set in stone. But speaking 3 out of 5, that's the only players remaining here for FGCU. Still a lot of pressure, even then, not really able to kind of exert too much of a retaliation so far, as Clemson Orange have made some great efforts to take control of this map, and they've done so in a wonderful manner, just making sure to take these fights on their own terms. The problem is they haven't run the player back towards Shower. It's nice back and forth here, but quite frankly, with that spike taken down, Triple R can only do so much, and it's just not going to be enough.
It was a great attempt from Triple R, to be fair. They realized they had to go for the reload. They wanted to extend to the player that was moving towards the back of sight instead of the player inside Showers, hoping that they would also go for the reload. Timing was tight, and they didn't get the perfect first shot kill that they were asking for, but they knew how to play that scenario. And that's the thing that we try to look for at an individual level, Dallas, a lot of the times is understanding your importance of your role and how you need to fulfill it in this moment. And that's somewhere that you don't really expect a Brim to be. That's an idea, a position, a scenario that's not expected of them, and he still plays it very well. And that's what we're expecting from Triple R, who's kind of leading the pack in a lot of ways, especially when you have to kind of guide your team. Smokes it down, make that call out. You have to round out. I've got post plan. I've got Molly waiting and saying, I need timer for this. I need information on this. You've got to be very vocal. And even when you're alone, you got to be able to listen, and you got to know, the other players on your team got to know when maybe not to open their mouth as much and, you know, make the reference like you did earlier in game 1 or map 1. Sometimes you can hit that deafen button on Discord so you can have a moment of silence to like, get your head in the game and focus up. But that's a great round for Clemson, starting things off 1-0. And they're moving up Spike here once again with a normal default here, down through B long to maybe try to transition in towards Octagon. If they get the kill, they have B. That's it for sure.
Even already going ahead. Getting seen up on the Trailblazer. Well played here by the likes of Clemson Orange to go ahead and sniff out that player, make sure no early picks were made, and knowing that Bucky was there. Oh, I'm just gonna ignore that.
It's fine.
Towards B.
Reply destroyed.
They're gonna put the spike down.
Spike planted.
Even casters have their breaking points, guys.
There's just some things where I'm like, this dude. Oh, put the sticks down. It's a keyboard and mouse game.
Oh my goodness, and it's crazy because we've seen really good spray transfers today.
That wasn't a spray transfer. That was I shouldn't have taken this fight. Let me not show my head. It's like, dude, Viper's at least 6 feet. She doesn't get her title, no, for nothing.
You think so? It's the heels, right?
Oh, she definitely heals Octagon.
All right, that's what it is.
Which is not.
Here. Shame their breaches against us.
Olby?
I really needed
And, oh no, it's flat feet in this. It's flat feet in this. I thought she actually had like a platform shoes, you know?
That's just it's combat gear, so it's like you're not running around in heels.
Well, there's a little bit of heel on there, right? Like, I mean, like, is it just like the normal? It's like boots. Never mind. It's like normal boots.
Yeah, it's combat gear, but you know, like when they're in between operations and whatnot.
Oh, you like slide into those? They're like fucking. They're like sandals.
It's gotta feel like.
What the fuck? I'm sorry for my language. I apologize, but that just totally caught me off guard. I'm in a total
you
loss.
You said it twice, and I'm totally like, you got no clue. See, that's something I'm expecting to do. That's why it's so funny how the roles are reversed.
I have never in my life done that at broadcast, but I'm at a total shock. I apologize profusely. That's totally on me, but that is an unbelievable. I just have never seen that before in my life.
Double down is crazy.
Who's next?
I didn't realize I did it the first time.
Exactly.
The second time just came out.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
All right, Arbol VSAT from Poco, the guy that we thought would never put down the operator, now making so many shifts in this game. I don't even know really what to think anymore, but still, nonetheless, able to go ahead and find a couple kills in the meantime, or at least remount to something with that Bucky in hand. But the rest of FGCU, here just go ahead and say, nah, side is ours. Only 30 seconds remaining on the clock. If you're not finding your rotate, you're taking these fights and you're losing them one by one. Early here in the game, third round done and dusted. And we're finally back in the Foreman factor, not saying 1-1. Nah, 2-1 split is what we expect. It's what we need, and I'm very happy is what we were given.
Oof, FGCU with the recovery in the round where needed, as expected as well. Only losing one rifle puts them in a very comfortable spot heading here into the next, and it was Triple R that lost it, and they were already doing plenty fine, I would say, overall heading into this one, and they can play a lot closer of an angle on the defense than maybe some of the other roles necessarily would have to. In worst case scenario, they hand that over to Fox and let them run around with the judge if they truly feel that it's enough of a crippled point for them, right? But they're struggling to really get out with momentum onto it. They'll hold a little bit further back, sitting inside showers. Triple R waiting for that moment. Out comes the Yoru clone and the flash right after the fact. And Poco cannot keep up with the firefight. And that's a Vandal that's handed over. And a perfect point for FGCU to now say defensively, we have half of the potential on A locked down. They now need to either push to B, where we've got a stack of utility, or come through short, where Jacoby's got on lockdown by taking down Jax.
Well, I mean, looking for some kind of pressure here. I mean, it's not really going to amount to much here for the likes of Clemson. Just 3 players. You can get something done, but FGCU just kind of holding the lines. Even in that Cypher setup over towards the B site, you just leave that player by his lonesome if you really need to. Get the rotation from the sky. Find a denial with 40 seconds remaining. I mean, you can get a rotation done at any time, but with one more biting the dust, it's just maybe wraps here. Fox absolutely obliterating this team, showing that Adulson has to be on the attacking side to start to excel.
The rotate back,
30 seconds
hold it
left.
back, make this a timeout. Just talk things through. It's a small time. It's a small world. That ride lasts like way too long. This one's only gonna last like 30 seconds for essentially a timeout. And for Clemson, which we kind of were like, hey, y'all needed that timeout on the last map. Y'all needed that moment to kind of sit back. You need it in the first half. You need it in the second half.
10 seconds
Moments
left.
like this where you can sit there and go, here you go. What went wrong? How can we break this one down? But the issue, Dallas, is a lot of times when you see a huge round disadvantage like this and then one person saves, Clemson and Orange are going to feel like they have to meet and match this one player. And it's not like Halo would be able to buy a rifle for a teammate since they don't need one now. No. Everyone is going to feel pressured.
Halo's been an absolute unit in this series. You play selfish as all get out here, saying, forget the rest of you. If somebody's going to step it up here, it's got to be Brim. I mean, just get that spike down. I have an incendiary. I can sell out as long as I need, and even more so, I can also just kind of play. I am the clutch factor, plain and simple. And I mean, you chalk it up to that. But Epoch having that Bucky, I think you can also kind of farm these orbs around the map, find maybe an effort for a showstopper, because you know they're going to be playing at range. You're not going to find that clearance very easily, or you just need to overwhelm Hookah, or even better yet, U-Haul, and just take the fights there, because you got 2 players there. Find a trade of some extent, and you know your value has been presented here for the round. But with that double duelist, you could take that sacrifice to some degree. But taking it slow and steady and find this default, I'm seeing Remnant to split, and it's a little concern.
Shots connecting out. You're just trying to get some sheriff hits to get some damage off onto the board. Fox knows they're there. Jax knows that they know that they're there, and doesn't take much to secure that kill. But Poco with a very successful sheriff shot and a relocation back and away from the initial danger. You can make up and get that VSAT back online fairly quickly. It's a B site push in its totality. A bait and switch on A. And now the question is, can Poco make it back fast enough to be fully contending in this? Or will FGCU kind of circumvent that danger and quickly extend in through mid and try to get control there of Hookah as fast as possible? They may not even need it. It's Kylan Shu's house, and Kylan Shu is swinging from elbow and taken down 2. Hunting for even more. The limelight and luxury has been stolen by Triple R, and that's why Kylan will rotate to watch Octagon, where Poco has to come from, basically. And Stuff's just blind fires and actually gets the kill through that. That's crazy. And it's another round win for FGCU.
I mean, good for them to get on the board. Good for them to kind of continue this string a little bit. I mean, go back to back to back. I mean, the pistol round, you can't really go ahead and think about it too much, considering, I mean, that is just the start of the game. Clemson to get themselves on the board, find those 2, and not get cut short is nice, because they're not just kind of getting neutered completely, but they're finding their presence. They're saying, okay, this game is feasible to some degree. We're not getting choked out right off the rip. But I think, honestly, as the course of this game goes on a little bit longer, you see these ultimates start to unravel. You have a Sky, you have an Orbital Barrage, you have a Showstopper. I mean, you have all the piece of a puzzle here, at least to create somewhat of a retake. Create that space, choke it off, and then just completely obliterate people as they're on the run. I mean, it creates enough chaos to actually create a perfect window for those who, well, excel in chaos. But looking at Clemson Orange, they're going to try to kind of build up what they can. Another rifle round underway. I think FGCU need to go for an investment at a point like this to kind of say, hey, let's definitively get this lead. I mean, sure, it's early in the game, but 4-2, that's still double their rounds. That's a better way of looking at it and saying it's worth the investment, and we're going to have a lot more rounds to work with afterwards.
Hawk out.
Zerg will send out the guiding light, clearing out tube on the site. With both trapwires set up directly in for a possible plant. It's not in the default you typically expect, but if you attempt to extend past that default, you are trapped in the trapwire, and it'll be very difficult to escape your way out of it. And that's exactly what Colin Chu was setting up there. Epoch was completely stuck within it.
I've got your
It's a spray down through tube, a wall bang frag, and that B site now 100% known for Clemson as do not go here. Very bad decision. No. Let's go to the A site where they had those players waiting, and a quick access TP to get over through showers as the plants should start going down, and there it is, finished and concluded. But they're still losing players here with Fox doing very well, and an orbital strike to try to flush them out of U-Haul.
Well, it's a good call there. Good little exchange to just kind of go ahead and bide out that time a little more so. But with FGCU kind of waiting for the spike to go down to really result to all these tactics, not really flush anything out in the meantime. With Jacoby still alive, with that stun ready to roll, you got to understand what's at stake here. You got to understand where these players are more likely playing, and you know one's right now. But with the repositioning and the smoke, if anything, just cutting you off, and Kylan not swinging that, I'm saying this right. I mean, it could be a last-ditch effort, but Clemson, if they just play this right, they win it no matter what. They don't have to fight.
Yeah, they don't. You can sit back, hide things out, and when really a lot of your success has come off of Poco being that one-man threat off on that A side, because that's how your default pans out. It's usually Chambers off that direction. Sometimes it'll be a duelist. If you have a jet there, they can kind of lag behind there and let your rays go off to the opposing site. Poco has been such a huge proprietor of success for Clemson in this, and that's what we wanted to see from them in map 1, Dallas. That's what we wanted to see from them, being aggressive, playing a little bit more cheeky. And yeah, they're not extending out of showers like a lot of people would necessarily do. They're not getting in the face of Florida Gulf Coast and fighting it with a candid attitude. They're hiding back. They're picking up good kills, good exit frags, and they're rotating at about the right time, if not a little slow, like we saw 2 rounds prior over on that B site, but they're holding the ground, which is giving the rest of the team that little bit of that extra room, the Thanksgiving dinner belt unbuckle where you can put in an extra, piece of the pumpkin pie. That is what you have with that TP back over towards showers to regain control on that A site, and Poco is giving you that. And that's such a huge piece of the puzzle for Clemson's success to keep FGCU on their toes, because they can't just keep hitting the same side like was attempted on that last map, because it was an awful attempt on their attacks to try to continue onto a site.
Well, being back and forth and still just kind of going for these attempts and able to kind of play out that clock. I mean, the spike denial is there for FGCU, but I mean, the biggest factor so far, I mean, obviously is Fox and Kylan. Separating these two players, putting on different sides of the map, and making sure they kind of have some reinforcement behind them. And already with a lot of pressure being put up towards that A main and not even firing the showstopper, when even if you're blind, just going for it is a little insane to say the least. But FGCU, that's the only player that they lost as a sacrifice. And it was positive at the end of the day. It was worth every single last second and every ditch effort. Already overwhelming the last player, the kind of remaining Epoch there that was lurking about. You couldn't care less about what else is going anywhere in the map because, well, you got a Cypher.
My camera is
You got
destroyed.
a solo unit just holding down this all by their lonesome. You let the spike go down because it's a brimstone, so sure, that's half the equation. The spike just went down. You have a massive flank coming underway, and they are trapped on site, so they can't really set up for this post plant. They can't really go for this hole too much, and they're even invested in Seekers. Good God.
Last
Triple.
player standing.
What is going on in Octagon? Zuko's position is known. It should have just been pushed right there when they knew they had the stun off in the first place. But Zuko's position's known. Their life will be forfeited just as quickly as that. But Triple R, man, you're such a huge, impactful player for your team with a swing back from V Long. Had him off guard. But it's a round win nonetheless for FGCU. And this half, Dallas, has been very back and forth. Yeah, 3 rounds in a row were won for Florida Gulf Coast, so we can say statistically in rounds that have the most meat, the rifle buys, unrifle buys, the success stories that come from that, they're winning those majority of the time because we've only had 5 and they've won 4 of them. But Clemson Orange, that doesn't matter. If they get most of their success riding off in this attack from those pistol rounds, that's fine as long as their defense can meet, match, and go above and beyond the prowess that they've had here. And I don't think they're out of the count, but they're on a thrifty in this one. And that probably leads you to believe that it'll be a quick fire for Florida Gulf Coast unless something crazy happens for Clemson, which we most definitely have seen.
I mean, we've seen it here and there, but we've seen it being more of a catalyst of those sheriffs surmounting to something. If it's not the classics, I mean, I'll drop the entire broadcast right now. But I mean, I just don't know if that's going to happen too much, especially with that initial sheriff already going ahead and being cut off.
Can we have a round of silence just like to digest everything we've seen today and heard?
Dude,
and apparently I've said.
Like it's like Clemson, dude. They shine the brightest whenever their stuff works. But good God, it is the most disappointing thing. It just like reeks of silence and just of disappointment whenever it just doesn't.
Flawless.
They got some of the highest. I wouldn't say the highest highs. We've seen some insane stuff, but their lowest of lows are something else.
Oh my goodness. It's one of those moments where as a caster, you just, half the time you feel like you just can go silent. It speaks for itself in the moment. What was it last week, the moment where they dropped from on Lotus? They went and drop on A site and tried to get back up and they used 2 boost packs and got nowhere.
Which that was in the middle of a retake, so we at least had something else going on. But I mean, all that's happening is just failure after failure after failure. It's like, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer.
Time to jump.
Sometimes you got to be a little Debbie. Little Debbie's great though, to be fair. You ever have their like honey buns and whatnot? It's delicious.
I've had everything but a little Debbie.
There's some really crazy stuff out there.
Even the ice cream, all of them.
There's ice cream?
Spike down, B.
Wow.
Last Thanksgiving, me and my family sat down, bought every single flavor, and had a little taste test. Could have made a YouTube video out of it or something. If my mom wasn't literally, if she doesn't cut off her phone plan every time we threaten to take a picture of her as a joke.
Me at every family gathering. My face is on the internet enough. My face and voice are on the internet enough. I don't need any more of them, all right? I don't need any more pictures taken of me. Yeah,
sign me up for videos all day.
Yeah, for real. And get at least like I can.
Pictures worth 1,000 words. I speak that in like 2 minutes. Who cares about 1,000 words?
Yeah, exactly.
That's nothing. You need a video to capture me.
Speaking of video, Clemson have been caught in 4K, though this broadcast is most definitely not in 4K because Twitch does not support that resolution at any solid FPS whatsoever.
Already losing
30
the funny.
seconds left.
They are getting pretty caught out here inside B long. Another operator shot from Fox tears down the third man for Clemson, leaving them with just 2. And they'll use the relocation to bait out a possible transition through the TP. But with Poco then knocking down one more. Yeah, guys, I don't think it's an actual TP. This one has to be real, though. Right, guys? This one must be. But that's where the trap wires are. Both teams, both players. It's triple R to run them both down.
Full sprinting at a wall, just spraying it down, knowing a tripwire is there. It's the fact that the round hasn't even ended, and they're like, no, it's ended. They're like, just run it down anyways and just try. Those are expensive guns. I mean, I can't blame them for, wanting to go for it, but knowing that the tripwire is going to roll you is so funny and still just decide, nah, why not? But FGCU, not really rolling this game just yet, but I mean, they're definitely on a roll looking at this score line. I mean, they have had themselves a lot of good licks so far. I mean, over and over and over again, these rounds are just looking to go in their direction. They have a complete and utter control of this defensive side of the map. In Orange, it may just be an exact duplicate of what we saw in Split to some degree. I mean, the way they have the pressure, I mean, obviously already finding 3, but we saw that 8-4 kind of lineup last time. Clemson have a lot of ultimates to get something done here, but they just don't want to make the investment, especially in a round like this where you're getting on the sheriff. Can you blame them in this point? No. But every other round, oh yeah, I'm screaming at them.
Fox still holding in with the operator on this A side. 3 players stacked up defensively for Florida Gulf Coast. I mean, you have a player deep inside of Hookah, aka Jacoby, ready to fight up in the face of Clemson, despite the fact that Clemson are in an eco round. It may lead to believe that they don't know how deep the weapons go, how deep the rabbit hole goes for them.
I'll handle this.
And Poco will just say, yep, I'll trade out a rifle. You take my Vandal. That's totally fine. I bought it for a reason. I'll use the VTOL. Full in. I don't need 9 kills to count up this kill streak. I don't even know if I have 9 kills at this point. I didn't remember Poco's stats. They're doing pretty good. I'm going to get that information from my team, and it leads to a bit of success elsewhere. through TP, with Jax getting a share of shots to the head to make this a 4v5 post plant.
Love the way Kylan just uses that cam, hears that smoke, uses those cameras aggressively. You don't see a lot of players really do this too much. Clemson and FGCU using literally every piece of utility they have in Clemson, knowing they're in the post plant. Use everything you got. I'm surprised the Viper's Pit didn't go down and instead just using that orbital strike. I mean, regardless, nothing really left here on the board inside of FGCU. Just fucks with that operator. And this guy's been a menace with the Vandal. I'm surprised he's still running this off, but still going to look to go ahead and get it. Maybe one more kill off the back with nothing but an arm showing and a lot more bullets inside that Vandal magazine. It's an easier shot to make on that side of the field. So getting 4 on the board for Clemson. Very big for them, showing that, okay, one more and we can just compensate this entire game with a pistol round. This is ride or die territory, quite frankly, once more. This round determines whether FGCU get themselves 8 or Clemson Orange get themselves, I would say, either 5 is enough. That's really what it matters to them. If they don't win 1, they're kind of done for. But if they win at least 1, it locks. It's not even about just kind of winning rounds. It's about locking FGCU out.
There's no chance Poco gets the VTOL back online, and when you know so much of that last round was off of the success of that information, maybe Clemson could be better used to have something like a Cypher on the team that's really good at that information. You were just highlighting just how good the chamber for FGCU was, actively using and aggressively using the cams through smokes, trying to get that information and prowling around for retakes. That is the exact thing you're asking for out of that utility player. And what just happened to Epoch? Mid-air, getting the headshot to Kylan. Kylan has to be fuming after that one, but it won't stop the barrage coming in from Triple R to get a refrag back towards Zuko. Triple R's position is 100% known, and Halo Jorge will get their doppelganger dealt with as fast as possible to give a 3-on-3 now. The post plant you'd assume to come soon because the Viper's Pit's been called forward, and the plants, the spike, ready to go down in a moment's notice, but they're really, I guess, hesitating to choose where they want to put this down because they know there's still utility left to burn for FGCU.
Well, looking for at least a little bit of pressure here. Just trying to go ahead and find this free taker. So about something out of it, it's going to be a little bit of a difficult task considering you don't have the secrets here. You don't really have any information. It comes down to a trailblazer and a guiding light. And if those aren't being invested, and better yet, those are already used, you have nothing here besides your own 2 eyes and the one that's being regenerated. So this is your last-ditch effort. Time is ticking. You know players are set back on their side of the field, and they're just going to be playing that delay game across the field. So FGCU, I mean, you tried, but another round done and dusted, delaying things. Snake fight possibly to go ahead and cut something off, but still, once again, just a game of delay, delay. With no time here on the board.
Is there time?
Oh my God.
This may be a pixel worth. 1 second. It was really way too close because I mean, you look at that scenario and you're having
audio was kind of a little iffy for me.
And you're having your full HP player stick that spike when you know it's going to be a gunfight you need to swing into. It was interesting to say. I don't blame you for thinking FGC would lost that one. First off, that Viper's Pit is a big pain in the rear. Jax knows exactly how to play that. You sit inside of showers. You play all the way back around the corner. You know the perfect place to pop that so it wraps around the bend. It's exactly what you're asking for. They played the bait on the spike exceptionally well. The paint shells, by all accounts, if they had come half a second sooner, would have killed your Viper. If not, have also gotten your Brimstone in the first place because they were also down to slim to none HP and standing in the same area. Little things almost cost FGCU that, but they made the recovery and they played it right, and they're starting this round really well as well, with Kylan Shu opening up for a first blood onto the best player right now for Clemson at Poca.
Spike planted.
I mean, good start here for both sides. I mean, regardless, I mean, you've got the real estate, you've taken the sacrifice, but you got that spike down, and that's really what it comes down to. In a 3v3 situation, FGCU with these Seekers in hand, they can have the attempt, they can have the information, but do they really have the space to kind of capitalize off the back of it? Because you see the 2 controllers just kind of moving back once more, better yet, at least the main controller being Jack, sitting back, but I mean, they have no idea this is going off. They're not swinging it whatsoever. they're just kind of getting ready for a setup that's never even going to be a possibility because
Switching
they're
sides.
never going to have to fight it. So already with the half coming to a conclusion, being 8-4 across the board, it's an exact replication of what we saw on Split, and it was just mere gunfights, just being won by FGCU that much more. So Clemson Orange, while this map seemed a little bit more comfortable for them, I'd say, it still just didn't really find all the effect they needed once again out of having that double duelist that we had to highlight on the last map as well. This composition, I don't want to really chalk it up to just that, but it just has not been it for them today.
With a halftime switch, FGCU with a major lead and moving over to the attack, they have a better way to deny space, which means they don't have to leave 2 players off to the A side to control an area on normal defaults if they're pressuring towards B, because they have that chamber, they have the spy cam, they have trap wires. But that chamber was also so darn good, Dallas, on the defense.
Here.
The B side double trap wire play that caught off Clemson 3-4 rounds in a row, and they weren't able to counteract it effectively. The one outside of Showers that they couldn't counteract effectively either. So much of their success on defense came from the chamber, and we'll have to see how that transitions into the attack, because in this round, it's just guns blazing. Kylan's going to try to get info off the cam, but truly speaking, there's nothing to really have left, as the only players remaining for Clemson Orange are coming from backside 2 from defender spawn, from Metal Hall, and out now from Hookah, where Triple R can refrag back Epoch, who took down Stuffs. And it's a 2v1 that you've got to come into with no information, and Kylan Chu almost still let it happen.
Well, Kylan Chu at least being alive there, going ahead, playing that defensive role on the attacking side, knowing the post plan is down, play defense, hold down that entire real estate that you've established control on, and make sure to get those closer kills. But I mean, able to just go ahead, at least had that lasting impact that not only shows that you're a defensive character, but it carries over to saying you can also guard the ground that you've taken on that attacking side of the field that your teammates have already efforted for yourself. So for Fox to find that space, this is where we're expecting Fox to start going off a little bit. I've had my kind of shreds of light here and there, and especially already having those 4 assists as well. You know he's kind of put in his 2 cents in a lot of these fights. But now comes down to, can you really make everything out of this? Can you really surmount that to more rounds? Can you really kind of culminate the rest of this game and start to apply that pressure that's such a necessity? And, well, still a lot of lingering questions considering that pressure is coming more so from the other side of the map, being that teleporter, where you have 2 players residing instead of on site, where the spike is, or at least trying to go.
The thing is, they know that there's 2 players now going to be behind them, which means they're forced to leave at least 1 here to watch that flank, and it becomes an even 2-on-2. It's genius using the man advantage this way for Clemson Orange. They don't know. It's an unknown possibility, and it forces Jacoby to step back away from site, leaving everyone on site alone.
Good God.
Spike down.
It was such a bad and awful spot for Triple R to be in, but the rest of the team steps up. Clemson had the right idea, but FGCU do what FGCU do. And Dallas, we've said it a lot and we'll continue to say it. Frag. Every single time. Gun up engagements. They are playing smart, and yeah, they had a gun advantage, but they are by far clearing corners, checking angles, and pulling up their guns and firing them way more efficiently than we're seeing Clemson Orange do. Even though in that round, it generally looked like Clemson Orange were outstratting them because of that man advantage they gained with the good shots of the Sheriff.
I mean, even then, I mean, seeing the way they just kind of punish a lot of these mistakes, I mean, you saw right there, Kylan Chu just turned that Cypher can basically into a Fenrir trap.
Right there.
I mean, the way that you just kind of go ahead, cut off these set lines, I mean, their adaptations and punishments of Clemson's mistakes are just that much better thought out of, quite frankly. And I think that's honestly that one exact situation, that last round could be the best example of what FGCU have been doing this entire series for the last 2 maps. It's just saying Clemson Orange, they're looking to scratch something together, and they find those cracks instantaneously, and they just know what to do about it. They don't over aggress every single round. They're not just outright winning gunfights. They're just kind of forcing Clemson to just walk into situations where they are just screwed, quite frankly.
Jackson, the pixel swing round of Octagon. And FGCU aren't giving them the time of day. Kylan Chu's not even giving them any sort of pixel to work off of. And that's going to eventually force a false sense of security here for Clemson Orange, and that's where the utility starts to get burnt, and that's when you're going to see the chamber swing back around that bend. Octagon unknown. You finally hear and see as Jax gets a kill, but you thought maybe they'd only get 2. But somehow Jack still
30
gets the third
seconds
because
left.
Triple R was smoked off because the team thought it was necessary, which it absolutely was just a moment after that frag. But this is where Stuffs moves to Cubby. Great shot to Halo Jorge. And Epoch now has to be very worried about their teammate that's separated off towards Elbow. Zuko hiding within the sky, waiting for this next smoke. An orbital strike of all things to ward them off away from Elbow because they want to control this space. They need this area to dominate. And I would maybe hope that they put a player in Octagon Dallas, but they're putting both off towards Elbow. One now lagging a little behind and another on site. That's where Stuffs will fall. Epoch gets the 2 final kills where needed and can step up, which Clemson desperately needed to keep FGCU away from 11.
Win or lose, there's a lot of rounds left in this game. I mean, so
Yeah.
you got all the time in the world to invest these ultimates early on, one by one from these players to kind of get yourself right over that edge that's necessary, especially the 2v2. That ultimate could be make or break. And while it didn't make the most impact in the world or wasn't utilized perfectly, still that kind of questionable extent of what it could be done, it's better you go ahead and use it and know that you're going to get it back than question what happens if you don't. So well played there by FGCU, but regardless, even better played by Clemson Orange to go ahead and find that clutch, and especially for Zuko to kind of understand how important their life is going to be for the rest of this game. Not really having the best showing thus far in terms of the assists or the kills, but I mean, going forward, maybe there's a possibility for him to really kind of get back in this.
Flash out.
Kobe waiting with the util, sends out the flashes and burns it off towards Showers because they know someone's here. Epoch will try to fire, can't get it off, and Fox gets their 1-for-1, forcing now Florida Gulf Coast University into a man advantage in a post-plant scenario with full control over this site, but not enough clearance inside of U-Haul. With a judge, jury, and executioner that is Halo Jorge, rips through one with the shrapnel from the buckshot. Jax with the rifle in hand instead. And Poco's got all the information in the world trying to use the flash to their success. Can't get it out in time. And it's a 2v1. Kylan Shu needs to step out again.
Oh my!
Down Jackson Zuko. 11th round FGCU, and Kylan Shu is a monster on the field on Chamber.
Well, there's that threshold crossed by the efforts of, well, the top frag once more. Kylan Chu showing that you don't need to be a duelist to go all out on the attacking side. You don't need to be controller to take control of the game. You don't need to be initiator to take fights on your own terms. A good Cypher can do anything just about as well as anybody else can, because this game really comes down to one thing. Utility doesn't find kills. It sets you up for opportunities to do that. And, well, what better than, sure, flashes are great where they can't see, but if you have all the information in the world and the all-seeing eye that is intel, well, you probably always have a leg up. And Kylan Shu definitely has the aim to back it up.
Viper's pit off inside Octagon to lock down the totality of B-Long. May throw a wrench in things here, Dallas, in any attempt to get the FGCU assault into the B side. And the craziest part about that is they use the Viper's pit, and you'd expect it to be a 1, if not 2-player hold on the B site. There's 3. And now FGCU can be lulled into maybe a false sense of security, saying, well, there's probably 2 here. If we just get through the Viper's pit or circumvent it, we've got a good spot. But now we've gotten a kill on the A side, so that's not a concern ever. It was either 3 or it was 2. And we'll take that gamble against the unfortunate use of the Viper's pit. We need to play to the opposing side, but they're going at it way too slow. And this is where Clemson Orange will either move Poco or the Sky as well over to the A site, because Poco dedicated and the Sky hesitated. They'll need to move in quick, because here comes the audio cue. Here comes the information. They use the neural theft. They get all the information they could ever ask for. And FGCU have a 2-man advantage, knowing now where Poco is as well, with Triple R calling that one out. It seems like it's doomed, and there it is. Good lord.
Player standing.
Just push and spawn. Just knowing that the eco is here. They can't really take these fights at their own terms. I mean, FGC is just kind of pushing them out, speeding these rounds up, giving them less time to discuss. I can't remember if we've used the timeout already for this half or not. I mean, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a difference, considering it is a 7-round difference on the field, and FGCU are just going to keep on rolling. 3 ultimates now to work with to kind of go ahead and just really send this thing home. Clemson Orange have nothing but those Seekers to work with, and maybe an orbital barrage if you see Halo able to kind of manage to get that first blood, or at least maybe kind of squeak out an ult orb early on. But these buys still are just not it. That last round you thought was somewhat of an investment to save it for the next. Nope. they're just both each half of the whole pie, and even then, it may not even be all that good once it comes out the oven.
Sometimes you've been cooking in the kitchen, but unfortunately, you can't cook enough. You only have one oven, and it takes a little while, a little too long. Rush in from Crimson Orange. This could be just a last dire effort to get something pieced together, and you've gotten damage off towards the chamber. And if there was any one agent I'd be harping to remove, it'd be this one that's been so darn effective for FGCU. But that doesn't mean Jacoby's not into the fight, and neither is Fox, each of them picking up a kill apiece, giving them that two-man advantage, giving them the spike plant for free. And though you dip some damage in, you dip your toes into the frustrational fight. There's a regrowth on the board. There's a sky in effect for FGCU. And anything you try to bring to the board has to be effective. And it's just not going one hundo until Zuko gets a twofer that honestly should have at least ended with Zuko's life being taken down by Fox. Poco with a Spectre. Check your corners, Clemson! This round was recoverable. It's Stuff's getting two for free, and FGCU being rewarded 13-5 2 maps in a row.
It's stacked. I mean, who isn't? It's just the craziest thing to think of. But regardless, one thing that isn't crazy to think of is FGCU after that second map winning out this entire thing. They have momentum, basically the same exact lineup. Triple R also once again showing what they're made of. Kyle and Chu going ballistic there for longest time. Triple didn't even get to that circumstance until the very end. And Fox, well, just closely behind. I mean, looking at these guys on the side of Clemson, I mean, seeing that start that they had on the likes of Ascent, they just didn't really meet it. It felt like they kind of found that speed. They were cruising along for Ascent there. It was a comfortable ride. They weren't speeding. They weren't slow or anything by that means, but it just felt like they didn't really have that gas in the tank, and they thought they just sit on cruise control for the rest of this ride.
What was the thing I had said after map one? It was Ascent isn't a litmus test or something like that for how the rest of this is going to go. Ascent tends to be very close almost every single time you see it, if not going into OT half the time, right? Yeah. Seeing Clemson win that, even if they looked pretty darn good doing so, and they looked like the better team at the end of that map, they're supposed to. It was their pick. That's what they were going for. That's what you expect, and they met expectations. Split is a niche pick for a map, and my goodness, did they get dominated on, right? That's just how it's going to work out. You do a good game, and if Florida Gulf Coast say, we know what we have to do, we're going to do it well. And Bind, this is the true test to see where Clemson sat. This is no longer the gentleman's agreement Ascent. This is no longer a weird choice of Split. This is a map everyone should also know because it's been here since the alpha of Valorant. And then pretty much everyone that's anybody tried to play back in the alpha, spamming Twitch chats for the codes and praying they could get in. This was the map that was released during that, and everyone should know it. And seeing it turn out this way for FGCU shows that they are just that good. They can be that dominant. And that 1-1 record they had, it's a little misleading, it seems. They're now going 2-1 into the next week, and the stat line's going to now match for the opposing side. Clemson, unfortunately, just couldn't meet their maker here, Dallas.
I mean, keep in mind, though, still, I mean, Clemson was, they could have still been 1-1 at the end of the day. They had a forfeit as one of those games, showing that, I mean, obviously coming into Ascent, the 13-8, I mean, if honestly, I would prefer a team to suck at Ascent, quite frankly, because at least it would give us something to work with. Not only just from an entertainment perspective, I'm not saying to sandbag anything, but still, it shows that, I mean, Ascent, you just kind of leave because it's so passive and it's so ingrained naturally into every single player that, quite frankly, I don't think you need to practice it. I mean, it feels like Riot almost weighs that map when it comes around to ranked queues. And even then, you're not really differentiating too much, going too crazy with it because you know it so well that I think, honestly, mid-round calls can carry you through that map 9 times out of 10 because of how just easy and how just kind of blatantly vanilla the setups are for the defense and those lanes are there. So just going ahead and using all of your attention, all your time to go somewhere else is honestly a much better idea for the majority of these teams. I would prefer to see a 13-4 on Ascent and then see really close maps on Split, really close maps on Icebox, really close maps on Lotus, really close maps and Bind and every other map that has some level of diversity. Then you just saying, let's just go ahead and make sure that this map that's always going to be close is there and it's close. And then everything else just completely shatters apart. That's the avenue Clemson went for. And I think, quite frankly, Ascent, I just think it should never be chosen. I think it should always be the decider, worst case, just because it's right there. Make sure you can get comfortable with 3 maps, and then you can start off with that and really just hammer it down.
Comfortable with 3 maps, you're guaranteed to play one of them, right? Like that's the way it should be. You're guaranteed one. They can't ban all 3 right off the rip. So try to pick something that's different than Ascent. 3 other maps than Ascent that you need to put on your repertoire, and then have Ascent be the final one, because you never know how truly the other team works it. But that's it for us today. Make sure you guys return next week with more Rocket League action, and then we'll return back again on Thursday of next week to return with more Valorant, the best time of the week here for the SCL. Not to judge Rocket League too harshly, but that has been it for me, Infernosis, as well as my good friend here, Dallas. Thank you guys very much for watching. We'll see you guys next week with more action.